Ladies and gentlemen, it is now that time of the year, that time when we get together to talk about the year in gaming. This is the ATACS Game of the Year podcast set, a set of podcasts, because we thought it would be the best idea to break a lot of these discussions up, because if you didn't know, 2016 was a big year in gaming. There are a lot of things for us to talk about. I am your host. I am Paul from Atlanta, Georgia. Joining me in our virtual roundtable is Mr. Flex from Raleigh, North Carolina. What's up, Flex?
I'm bundled up, hunkered down, ready to rock.
All right, and I just want to throw a quick shout out for Mr. Flex for putting some of this stuff together, making a document, editing it. I'm pretty sure that he knows every game that came out in 2016. So thanks for that.
It was fun.
Yeah. Also joining us from the metropolis of Wendell, North Carolina, is Mr. Nate. What's up, Nate?
Hey, how's it going? I saw that in this document we're all looking at, you had it spelled Wyndel.
I kind of like Paul's spelling better.
That's like a way more cool Viking spelling of Wendell, so I think I'm going to have to talk to somebody to change that.
Well, I didn't know how to spell the town, but then I realized that it just didn't matter at all, because it's, I mean, where exactly is Wendell? Is that to the east of Raleigh, south?
Yeah, it's like 30 miles east.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's the part of North Carolina that no one actually knows where anything is. But hailing from very, very far north of there, from New York City, New York, is my arch nemesis, Mr. Ryan. What's up?
The hamlet of New York. You'll never find it to send you missiles.
So, with this being our Game of the Year podcast, I just wanted to let everyone know, fair warning, there will be spoilers. We will do our best to attempt to keep this as minimal as possible, but when talking about video games that had an impact on us, we have no choice but to talk about the video games that had an impact on us and why. So there will be some spoilers for these games, and if you're very spoiler averse, we will try to sort of have some lead-in conversation about it first, but this is not going to be a spoiler-free zone.
We'll try and give heads up when they're coming, but they'll come.
So for day one, we're gonna go through a few categories, and I just wanted to let everyone know that our very first thing that we're gonna do is our old game shoutouts. These are the games that came out before 2016, but we really enjoyed them, and we wanted to just give a quick shout out for those games. And then after that, we're going to move into our best sounding game, which is just how the category sounds. The games that have the best sound, best voice acting, best music, just games that are pleasant on the ears.
All lumped into one.
All lumped into one,
yeah,
because we don't have that much time.
I don't know if they're all pleasant to the ears, but they at least have effective sound, right?
Exactly.
There you go.
That Doom soundtrack.
Oh, yeah.
Save it for the category, Ryan. And then we're also going to be looking at best multiplayer game, which has been, it doesn't matter whether that's co-op, competitive, online, local, couch co-op, not couch co-op. We are going to get into that category, which is a little light this year, honestly, but that's okay. After that, we're going to look at our biggest surprise game of 2016. And when we say most surprising, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is the best. It just means it's a game that more or less exceeded our expectations. And then our final bit that we're going to get into today is the best narrative. These are games that contain narratives that just really resonated with us. It's a pretty broad topic, and that's probably where most of our spoilers are going to come in at.
Yeah.
So, moving back up to the top of our Word document, old game shoutouts. And like I said, these were old games that we played this year that we just really enjoyed. We wanted to give a quick shout out to, and we ordered this list in alphabetical order. So the very first game up here is one that I actually played quite a bit, which is Age of Empires 2 HD Edition. As far as I can tell, it's the only Age of Empires game to have active expansions coming out for it right now, which is pretty funny when you think about it. But yeah. I've probably sunk about 60 or 70 hours into this game this year, and there's just something about loading up, a whole bunch of computers and just running over them.
You played that much this year?
60 or 70 hours, yeah.
Oh, man.
A truly old game.
That's
the oldest. Wait.
I got an older one on here.
Yep, I see it.
Yep.
That's an awful lot of Rogan.
There is an awful lot of Rogan. I have 120
Start the
hours
game
played.
already.
Exactly.
14.
Whoa.
Wrong game. So yeah, that it's still a lot of fun. Actually, my wife picked it up at the Steam sale, so we are going to be playing Age of Empires 2 together in the year 2017.
Yeah, we played that some a few years ago when that HD edition first came out, and Age of Empires 2 is still just fun.
It is.
It's just a great
So
game.
they are releasing a new expansion for it this year or next year?
I would need to go back and double check, but I do know that I saw an announcement that another expansion was coming out for that game, and I believe that will either be its second or third expansion since the HD edition came out on Steam. So that game is under active development, which is as crazy as that sounds.
I like how there's an Age of Empires 3, and everyone's just like, screw that, let's go back and make Age of Empires 2 expansions.
It boggles the mind.
They know what's good.
Yep.
So that's really all that I want to say about Age of Empires. The next game on our old game shoutouts list is Banished, a game that I have played before. Nate, I think you put this on here?
I did, yes. I played Banished over my summer break this year. One of the games that I sort of blitzed through during the summer to catch up on some backlog stuff. And that game's really pretty neat. It's sort of a town simulation, resource management kind of game. I had a pretty good time with it. I didn't get super deep into it. It's kind of a difficult game, I would say. So a lot of what I was playing was just sort of learning the mechanics and getting over that sort of initial hump. And then as soon as I got over the initial hump, a tornado appeared and wiped out my whole town. And so I turned the game off and haven't gone back to it. But
Awesome.
I still did enjoy my time with it.
Quick question about Banished. So I played it, I think, shortly after it came out, and I felt like one of the things that lacked was like a campaign. Have they added any content? It also lacked some polish. It felt like they had a few things. Do you know if they've added or patched anything since?
I'm assuming they've patched stuff. There wasn't like a real campaign thing. It was just you start a town and go through the years. But I don't know what's different between now and launch because I didn't really pay a lot of attention to it when it first came out. So I don't know, but there wasn't any like crazy story mode or anything like that.
Yeah, I actually played this game when it came out, and then I took a little bit of time off and went back to playing it again. There really wasn't any difference in the actual game from release to when I played it. I mean, there's been a couple of bug fixes, but they haven't gone back and added any sort of large amounts of content to that game. That being said, Banished is one of those games that I put 90 hours into. I really enjoyed that, so it's nice to hear that some other people are getting on the Banished train, even though it is a little unforgiving at times.
It is, but it is fun. So that's
like a 90s style sim game.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. So the next game we have on our old game shoutouts is another one that I added, Castle Crashers, which is something that I picked up on the Steam sale yesterday or the day before. I sat down, and I don't know how I missed Castle Crashers the first time it came through, but me and the wife picked it up, and we sat down yesterday and pretty much played Castle Crashers for 2.5 straight hours. It is extremely fun. Like I said, I don't know how I missed it the first time. But it was definitely worth picking up on the Steam sale. Have you guys played that at all? Or
Yeah, I played some of it when it first came out. I never finished it, but I probably played an hour or two of it.
Okay.
I enjoyed it. It's a very simple, straightforward, like side-scrolling beat 'em up.
Yeah.
So it's a fun game to play with a group. I think I played it back in the Xbox Live arcade days, which not that that's gone, but back when it was big. With a group of 4, and it's definitely a classic beat 'em up with some nice like RPG elements. It's pretty fun to play in like multiplayer. I don't think it'd be as much fun solo though. It'd be a little dull.
All right. Well, I don't really have a whole lot to say about it other than the fact that it was a lot of fun for the couple of hours that I played it, and I was a little sad when I went and checked howlongtobeat.com. Shout out, that's a great site. It saw that it's not exactly the longest game in the world, but it was definitely worth picking up, and I'm glad that I ended up getting on that train a little bit late. So Doom came out this year, but also Doom came out in 1993 as well.
Yeah, it did.
So, Mr. Flex, I understand that you've been playing the original Doom.
I did, yeah. So, I mean, I know I touched the original Doom at some point in my life before, but I had never given it. I didn't really remember much from it. And then when the new Doom was coming out and it was starting to look pretty good, I was like, all right, before I play new Doom, I need to remember what old Doom was. So I actually played this before I played the new Doom, and I was really surprised at just how well it held up. Despite coming out in 1993 and looking and in some ways playing very datedly like a game would from 1993, that game's still pretty darn fun. I can see why Doom had the impact it did in that day, because I didn't really. In the 90s, I didn't, for whatever reason, wasn't really in the PC gaming scene. So, I kind of missed a lot of that stuff. And, even playing it, 23 years later, I get it. Doom's cool stuff.
Yeah, I actually never really played a whole lot of the original Doom. I think I had a shareware 3.5-inch floppy disk sitting somewhere around that might have had the first level of that game. But it's interesting to hear you say that it's held up pretty well. Because I would not have expected that, just from my recollection.
Yeah, there's definitely some control things, I'm assuming the original version was all keyboard and no mouse, but, the controlling with the mouse is a little awkward. It doesn't feel nearly as smooth as a modern first-person shooter would, but, the level design's still great, the enemies are still great, the weapons are still good, the core of the combat there is surprisingly good. I didn't end up playing through the whole thing. I think I played through the first 2 episodes, because it's broken up into 4 episodes if you get the Ultimate Doom version.
Right.
But I enjoyed going back and seeing that thing for a few hours. It was a lot of fun.
All right. Did just curious, Ryan, did you ever play the original Doom?
I played Wolfenstein 3D,
Okay.
which I think is in a similar vein, and I did not enjoy that game.
Okay.
So.
All right. I was just curious. I was just thinking that out of all the people that played PC games, all 12 of us back in 1993, I didn't know if you were one of the original PC gamers or not.
I played some of the early games, but
playing the original Doom was a great lead-in to new Doom.
Okay.
I'm happy I did that.
All right. So moving right along, a pair of Final Fantasies, Final Fantasy 3 and 4. Nate, you've been digging into those, huh?
Yeah, man. This is part of my ongoing quest to play all the major Final Fantasies, so all the numbered releases, which I, as of a year or two ago, was missing 1 through 5. So I've been going back and playing those, and I made it through 3 and 4 this year. So at this point,
got 1 left.
Technically 2 now. So 5
yeah.
and now 15
I
are the
only
2
played
numbered entries that I haven't played. So yeah, I can just sort of group these together. 3 I didn't love as much. I think there's some cool stuff in that game, but man, the last 20% of that game is awful.
I was kind of surprised to see you put it on here, because I remember commiserating with you after you didn't even finish the game, right?
I got to the final dungeon, I guess, and there's no save points in the final dungeon, and that final boss is a huge difficulty spike.
Yeah,
and I didn't want to grind.
Yeah, that game doesn't have save points in any of the dungeons, and that was exactly my experience with that game, is going through that 2-hour-long final dungeon. I died on the final boss, and I did load up the game and go grind some more, and I just spent a few hours grinding, which was not fun at all. And then I re-went through the final dungeon and managed to beat the final boss, but it still took a long time.
Yeah, I just didn't have it in me to go and do the grinding and try it again, especially because even before that final dungeon, there are 3 or 4 other really, really long dungeons like all in a row right before the end, and it's just that took all the wind out of me. But before the end point, I liked that game a good bit. It did some cool stuff with like spell casting in the environment to do things like you cast the mini spell on yourself to go through like a tiny dungeon.
Right, I do remember that.
Like
So
there's cool
which
stuff.
version of it did you play? Which version of the game did you play?
Was
Played the
on
Steam version,
yeah.
which is a port of the
Okay.
3DS version. It's basically
Yeah.
not the 3DS, the original DS version.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of curious. I don't really recall. I don't recall having those issues with that final dungeon. So I was wondering if it was something with that particular port of the game, because I did play it on the DS.
Right, and that's what I played. And the
Right.
Steam version's the same.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think there's any difference, but yeah, I just could not do it. I mean,
Okay.
I could have with a bunch more time, but I just had no interest in.
Yeah, I mean,
grinding.
that game becomes like the longer that game goes on, the more of a kind of mindless grind it becomes.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, it did some neat stuff, but overall ended up feeling kind of disappointed with it. But Final Fantasy IV, which is also on here, and I also played on Steam, is just a fantastic game. Even today, like that game still holds up. I know I played it with updated graphics, and it had voice acting, which was weird, but
That does sound weird.
yeah.
Oh
you
yeah, you played a
should
weird
look
version.
you should look up sometime one of the cutscenes with Sid in it from the Steam version of Final Fantasy IV. He is such a weirdo in that game.
I'm having a hard time imagining that game with voice acting.
Yeah.
I played the DS version of that.
Yeah.
And I also played the original SNES version. Definitely one of my top Final Fantasies, but voice acting just sounds strange.
Yeah, you
It's
might
great,
have not
but it's
played
weird.
the best version of that one, but it sounds like you liked it, so that's all right.
Yeah, it may not be the best version, but I still really liked it. So I think that game is really good. But yeah, it is what everybody who talks about Final Fantasies and its long history says, which is like setting the stage for those grand stories and really interesting characters and things of that nature.
I don't want to make this a long tangent. I just want a quick answer. Final Fantasy IV or Final Fantasy VI?
I mean, if you're just asking my personal preference, I'm still going to go 6. I think 6 is still a more polished and interesting version of that style of game, but the fact that 4 came before obviously gives it some added bonus.
Okay, just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, and small future spoiler warning for anyone listening to ATACS. We've had on our calendar for a long time now to do a ranking of Final Fantasies. So there will be plenty of conversation about 4 versus 6 whenever we actually get there.
Yep.
But in keeping with the theme of this particular
And
podcast,
fights and tears and gnashing of teeth.
yes, I have some Final Fantasies to finish myself before we get around to that. But Final Fantasy IV is a fantastic game. I'm glad you took the time out to play that one this year. That definitely was one of my favorites.
It's a good one.
So
6 is better.
Move on. Abort.
Mr. Ryan, Fire Emblem Awakening. Would you tell me about that? I actually don't know which one that is.
Yes. So I finished Fire Emblem Awakening early this year, so I kind of was playing it most actively like late 2015, but I decided I'd put it on this year since I wrapped it up. But yeah, we'll be talking more about the gameplay and style of Awakening with Fire Emblem Fates, which was a game that came out just this year, so I don't want to dive too much into it. But I mean, Fire Emblem Awakening kind of rekindled the Fire Emblem. I think for the franchise in general, I think the franchise was not doing well.
Yeah,
but
so there's actually a fun bit of history with Awakening that they were basically ready to scrap the Fire Emblem franchise because the past few had not done well commercially, and like they basically told the Fire Emblem team like, hey, you got one more shot, and Awakening's the one they put out, and it did incredibly well both critically and commercially, and pretty much saved the franchise.
That was the one that came out for 3DS, right?
Yeah, 3 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, I did play that one. That was the one that had the really easy difficulty setting, which is the only reason why I played it. Yeah.
It did.
yeah, well, this year's Fire Emblems will be right up your alley then.
Really? Excellent. I love
Yeah.
easy games. They make me feel so good.
Yeah, it follows a lot of what Awakening did in that regard. So.
Okay.
But
All
yeah,
right.
we'll talk more about the style overall. But just to say that like Awakening kind of revive the franchise. And I mean, you know, I played the GBA Fire Emblems, and the first one of those that I played, I thought was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Those are difficult games. At least to me, they were. Just my brain doesn't really work that way.
No, they are difficult. I share your pain on those.
So, Flex, what is a fly wrench and why is it in this list?
Fly Wrench is the best game that did not come out in 2016.
All right. Well, I literally have never heard of it before, so paint me a bit of a picture.
Of all time.
Yeah, Fly Wrench is the real game of the year.
Okay, right.
Of all years.
Of all years. Across all space and time, apparently.
Yes, that is how this works. Fly Wrench is one of those games that's like really simple, and like I'll describe it to you and you'll be like, this sounds really goofy. But it's one of those games that's like, it's a really concise and snappy like action arcade game that just works. Like it's one of those games that you play it for 30 seconds and you're like, this feels fantastic. But like if you're just watching someone, it looks weird. But like you're controlling, I don't know, it's almost like this, it's like this bar that flaps at the middle. So it like, you're kind of like float, like you press A or, you know, X on whatever controller you're using to flap this, I guess it's a wrench, I don't know, and it flies. But yeah, it's just this bar and you're flying around, and they design all these really clever obstacles around it. So like when you're not flapping, when you're a straight bar, you're white and you can go through white lines. When you flap, you turn red and you can go through red lines. And then there's a different button that makes you spin, and you're green when you do that. And when you do that, you can go through green lines, and you also bounce off the neutral yellow walls. So like, really, that like literally all you do is just flap and spin. But the way they use the different colored lines and walls, and they end up doing all these different mechanics. Like they'll make high gravity zones, and they'll have, you know, moving walls, and they'll have switches that turn off some walls. So like they layer on different challenges on what's just very simple fundamentals that also controls really smooth. Like that's the key for Fly Wrench, is that it just controls super smoothly. And it's just a really fun, like rapid fire, quick pace action game. I think the style of it's also really cool. And the soundtrack is really, really good. You should definitely go listen to some Fly Wrench soundtrack.
All right.
It's made by the people who did Nidhogg. So there's kind of a similar, there's kind of a similar style to like the look and sound of the game to what Nidhogg had. But it's just a very intense like rapid fire action game. Like I would probably put it, you know, Nidhogg's a multiplayer thing. I would probably put Fly Wrench closer to like, I don't know, like an N++ style like action thing where you're just going through these challenges. But Fly Wrench is super cool. Like Fly Wrench was the old game I played this year, and I'm like, oh man, this thing's just rad. Like I wish I'd played this when it came out.
All right. Did anyone else play Fly Wrench, or is that a Flex special?
That's a Flex special for now. I bought it in the Steam sale. I haven't gotten to it yet though.
Okay. Well, that certainly sounds neat. I am interested in the soundtrack, so I'll probably, whenever we get off here, I'll go to YouTube and see if I can find the soundtrack on there somewhere. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's cool.
So moving right along to Invisible Ink. Nate, Flex, is it a cool game? I mean, I know you put it here, but is it really a cool game?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only roguelike I've ever beaten.
Yeah. Yeah, it is sort of a roguelike. It is a sort of stealth tactics game. You basically control a team of spies in this, it's sort of sci-fi-ish, sort of cyberpunky. I don't know, what style would you call that, Justin?
Yeah, I'd go with like cyberpunk, yeah.
A little bit, yeah. But yeah, you're controlling a small team of spies with cool spy abilities, trying to steal things and do cool spy stuff.
Yeah, and it's a turn-based tactical game, so like, you know, think of like an XCOM or something. Like it's kind of in that mode, like you have a small crew and you're going through these missions. But yeah, all your characters have neat like spy-themed abilities.
Yeah, and less combat.
That was made by
Clay.
Yeah, Clay.
The Mark of the Ninja guys.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep. Most known for Mark of the Ninja and Don't Starve.
Yeah, and Mark of the Ninja is also an excellent stealth game. So those guys know how to make cool stealth games.
Yeah, though where Mark of the Ninja's like action stealth. This is turn-based stealth.
Yeah, but they both take stealth concepts and do them in those different frameworks extremely well.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this one does, like, it has a cool, like, it's able to walk that fine line of, like, things being really tense and feel, like, on the edge and about to go out of control, but, like, still give you some good options. Like, my favorite moments in that game, there were at least 2 that I can think of off the top of my head where I thought, like, I was just completely done. And, like, it's kind of a roguelike game, so, like, you can't save scum or anything. Like, when you die, you're done. And like there were at least 2 moments in that game where I like thought I was completely boned, and I like just really scrapped and scraped and like used every ability at my disposal, and managed to pull through. And like those missions were super satisfying.
Certainly sounds neat. The last roguelike that I played was at FTL a couple of years ago. So it might be time to get back into that little genre again. So probably the opposite of a roguelike. Keep talking and nobody explodes. I've seen some gameplay footage from that game, but it just seems like you need to have a whole lot of caffeine to really make that game work well.
Or you
Ryan,
just,
you played this one?
Yeah, Ryan and
Yeah.
I actually played it together.
Okay.
We both got the experience. We switched it up a little bit. I was the guy on the paper for the first playthrough.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar how it works, one person is actually quote unquote playing the game where they're defusing the bomb, and then another person has the bomb defusal manual, which you get from bombmanual.com, which is a great URL.
Yeah, so
That
by
sounds great.
playing the game, I was actually so Flex came to visit me in New York, and I pulled out a little table I have, and I spread out this printed PDF like all over the table, and I had like some scratch paper, and he was reading me like these, what was happening, like these different modules on the bomb. It's like we've got this symbol, and I was like shuffling through my papers, like trying to figure out what it was, and it sounds like it almost sounds like you're doing a crazy office job type thing, which I guess that is a little bit what you're doing, but it ends up being like really kind of exciting, intense, and it's like I'm trying to optimize the way that I get information off of this paper and like give it to him, and he's trying to figure out like how he can best feed me information without looking at it. So it's a really kind of neat concept, and part of it doesn't even use like it's not like a 2-player, you have 2 computers doing the same thing. You're just using a physical pen and paper, like communicating.
Yeah, it's a really incredible, like, asymmetric multiplayer idea where, like, each person has, like, access to knowledge the other person does not. And, like, you're both trying to optimize on your end and then communicate what you're seeing to the other person in, like, a really clever way. Like, it's a really neat, like, back and forth that it's able to produce. Like, I think Ryan came up with all sorts of shortcuts on, like, the manual stuff, and then like I had things that I over time started learning, like, oh, I don't need to pay attention or convey these things because like I would start learning that Ryan needs to know very specific things, and like that kind of dynamic I think is just really fascinating.
All right.
The real best multiplayer game of the year.
I saw some, I don't know whether it was a Giant Bomb Quick Look or it might have been one of the other Let's Play channels on YouTube, but I did watch that one get played a little bit, and I just looked at it and I thought, I don't take Adderall, but I might need to for some of that. Because it
gets
seems
pretty
frantic.
intense, yeah.
A couple of them are pretty intense, yeah.
There was one where it was like, it was like Morse code or something. There was like one of them where it gave us a bunch of them, where a bomb just had a bunch of this one module, and we were just like, oh no.
Oh, like pause.
Yeah.
Short, long.
Reading
stop.
reading out the Morse code for me was a nightmare.
That sounds great. Speaking of nightmares, the Legend of Heroes: Trails of Cold Steel. I added that one onto this list, and it is a JRPG from Japan. That's what the J stands for. It's a little bit similar to Persona 4 or Persona 3 in the sense that you are a student at a school. There is a social aspect. There is a time of the year aspect. So days go by on a calendar, and the only thing that really keeps this game from really rising super high up my charts is someone in Japan decided to take all the various systems that have evolved over the years for JRPG battle systems and just took all of them and threw it into one game. It is incredibly complex in a way that the game doesn't give you a great opportunity to really run around and optimize gear, and it's basically materia. That's just what I'm going to call it. You don't have a whole lot of like free time. It's a whole lot of it's really a whole lot of set piece to set piece moments. So sometimes you'll find yourself thrown into the middle of a battle with a suboptimal character setup, and the battle system is the system itself is complex enough, but then they also throw what amounts to 2D movement and everything. And everything with that, where it's like, okay, spells have ranges, melee guys have different ranges. This person has a bow, and it's like, all right, stop. Okay, just stop. There's
too much going on.
There's too much going on, but the narrative is really good. So I am driven to finish the game, and the second one is already out in the U.S. now. I think it's going to be a trilogy. But the narrative's really good. The characters are really good. It's just when you get into a battle, it's like, all right, I have 17 different things to think of. Oh, and there's also a turn order, by the way. And the turn order can change depending on what spells you're using or what attacks you're using. So, like I say, they took every kind of RPG battle system and put it all into one box and said, have fun.
Is it,
Right.
What would you compare the battle system most to from other things you played? I guess to give us some base reference, or is it weird enough to be its own thing?
It's not weird enough to be its own thing, but it is multiple different systems.
Okay.
It's got Final Fantasy VII's materia system, but probably, I don't know, 3 times as complex as anything that you would see in Final Fantasy VII, because there are links between the various materia, and then there's also your character class itself as a materia. You can change that. You can change classes. So it's got that. And that also impacts all the spells you can cast during a battle. And then it's also got something, from Final Fantasy X, the turn-based combat, except it's a little more complex than that because you can do things to delay other people's turns. And then in various turns, there will be little bonuses. So it's like you might see that a guaranteed critical strike bonus is on turn 7 in this battle, and that's currently on the boss that you're fighting. Well, you don't want the boss to crit you, so you have to find a way to either delay his turn by 1, which would give you one of your characters that bonus, or you have to find a way to just putz with the turn order. And whenever you have one boss and then 4 little guys, and then you also have 4 party members, you're doing a lot of figuring on turn order to try and maximize that.
Yeah, that actually sounds really interesting. Whenever I've played a JRPG that you can mess with the enemy turn order, that's usually pretty interesting.
Yeah, so it does that. I really haven't played another game that has the 3D movement aspects. To me, sort of remind me of one of the Tales of games, where it's a little bit. It's not action in the sense to where you're doing a button combo, but the positioning of your party does make a huge difference, because if you have all your people grouped up, that's great for an area-wide buff, but that also means that the enemy is going to whack you with area of effect spells. So it's a whole lot of that, and thankfully the game does have a difficulty slider. But my big problem with the game isn't necessarily the difficulty. It's that it doesn't give you a whole lot of preparation time, in my opinion, for battles, because there'll be a story reason why half your party will change, and then you're thrown into a battle without a time to visit a vendor or something to sort of rejigger everybody. And that can get annoying at times. But like I say, the characters are really good. The narrative's really good. The story's definitely what's driving me to finish that game. I'm glad I picked it up. But it's not something that you can just play mindlessly.
Yeah, I mean, sorry if you already said this. How long do you think you've been playing it thus far?
Right now I've got 25 hours in,
Okay.
and it looks to be about a 35 to 40 hour completion
So
time.
it's not one of those like 80-hour life commitments, at least.
No, actually it is, because the first game ends on the first game ends on a
Gotcha,
cliffhanger,
gotcha.
which leads right into the second one.
Yeah.
So
Have you played any of the other Legend of Heroes games, or is this your first?
this is my
Because
first.
there's also like the Trails in the Sky series.
That
Yeah.
was the question I was going to ask: is where does that game fit? Because I
so-
thought I saw it first.
Yeah, my understanding, I know Trails of the Sky came out first, but my understanding is, like, I believe each of the subtitle series are standalone series. So, like, you would play Trails of Cold Steel 1 before Trails of Cold Steel 2, but whether you play those two before or after, like, Trails in the Sky 1, 2, and 3, I don't think it matters. I think they're, like, separate sub-series.
Right, and from what I've been able to read, this is all taking place in the same world, but Trails of Cold Steel takes place in a different nation than the Trails of the Sky. So you don't necessarily have to play one before the other, but you do have to play the first one in a given series.
Right.
And no, I've not played any other of the Legend of Heroes games.
I was just curious if it was similar, but no biggie.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, so that's my spiel on the Legend of Heroes: Trails of Cold Steel, which is a ridiculous title, almost as ridiculous as The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. We're getting into the long-winded titles here. Ryan, you played this one?
Yeah. So I've got the next 4 games on the list.
You know what? I'm
right.
just gonna let you just run through these at your own pace. You just
Sit
go
back
ahead.
and relax.
I'm gonna sit back and relax.
Though
for the break
I've-
from my hosting duties.
I will say I've played the first 3 of these. I just played them before this year.
Give me my airtime here. I'm
You
stretching
just
my legs.
you discover.
So The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. Yeah, I mean, this is a game I didn't really get to it last year. It came out last year, I think. But
It came out 3 years ago.
Yeah, it was a few
Oh,
years
did it
ago.
really?
Yeah, it's been a bit.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, it's a game that just holds up. That just
Yeah.
holds up really well. Like, you know, it reuses some of that classic A Link to the Past formula, but
Yeah.
it also does some smart new things with the Zelda franchise, and I was really impressed by it. Even though it reuses some of the gameplay from the SNES game, like, it doesn't feel like kind of a tired rehash of like old mechanics. Like, I mean, and part of it's just because those classic mechanics still hold up pretty well, but also part of it's just because like it does enough new stuff,
Yeah,
and
I
it
mean-
doesn't copy paste so much that feels like a retread.
Yeah, I mean, the Link to the Past template kind of is the Zelda template, period, in a way. And like A Link Between Worlds, yeah, it's like it's polished enough at that template, and then yeah, like you said, it also has just enough new wrinkles to kind of set itself apart, and still stand out.
Yeah, and when I say template, I mean that it borrows more directly from.
Yeah, it's got the same world
gameplay.
maps.
Yeah, it
it's
has
got
the
the same
exact same
world
world
map, the same kind of slanted top-down view, like the same feel of gameplay, and some similar like moves and items, as opposed to like Zelda 64, which they have the same dungeon template, but obviously has 3D gameplay. So
Right.
So yeah, not much more to say there. If you like to Link to the Past, you will most likely like A Link to Between Worlds, and it's
Yeah, you
really
will.
good entry
Yeah.
in modern Zelda.
Yeah,
And it's a
great
handheld
game.
too, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, when A Link Between Worlds came out 3 years ago, like, I was blown away by that game. Like, I mean, and I've spent a lot of my life playing Zelda games, and like it still managed to impress me all over again. Like, that game is just from top to bottom, like, it does what you want a good Zelda game to do. Like, it does the Zelda stuff well and adds enough, just new enough things to make it fresh.
So
Yeah.
moving on, I guess, to the next game, This War of Mine. Another game which I just picked up this year. I think, you know, the community reception from that game has been pretty good. I don't know if,
Yeah.
for me personally, it goes quite that far, but, you know, I don't know how emotionally invested I would say I was in that kind of game. But basically, it's kind of like it's a simulation game, I guess would be the best way to describe it.
That works.
Where you're like managing a household of people who are surviving during like a fictional war in an Eastern European country. Is that
Yeah.
Does that all sound right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
It's like a depressing version of The Sims.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Wow.
Oh no.
I think
The
that's
Sims was
reasonable.
depressing enough.
So it's I mean it's a fun game, like a pretty cool simulation. You as opposed to managing things like career and aspirations and things like that, you're trying to survive. Have enough food and coffee and cigarettes to not fall into depression and death.
Yeah, your characters have a lot of, it's not just their physical well-being, like their emotional well-being is also something you have to tend to.
Right.
It is really neat the way it has sort of a different setting than a lot of sim games, and it has some unique challenge aspects. I guess on the downside is it has sort of the same weaknesses as a lot of those games do, in that there's a learning curve. And in my playthrough in particular, like the game kind of punished me. That game is somewhat punishing for a sim game, and like I think I was on like a 20-hour playthrough and I had misinterpreted a few mechanics, so I ended up kind of like going into a death spiral. All my people got sick and depressed, and it didn't go very well.
Yeah, that's a game where like once things start going bad, it can snowball really quickly. And it's also a game, because when I played it, that was my biggest problem is actually very, very much what Ryan's saying, is like when I got like halfway or maybe a little more through the game, I was like, oh, if I knew these things going in, I could start over with this knowledge and like really game the system and probably make it pretty easy. But if you don't know those things, which you don't your first time going through, like it just makes things really tricky.
Yeah. So the learning curve is, I mean, that can be a fun part of those games, but in this one in particular, it felt a little more punishing. Like I kind of lost my 20-hour playthrough because I didn't know how to heat my house properly.
Don't set your house on fire to heat it, Ryan.
Well, no, it's like you have to build 2 stoves and like pump them all the way full to keep yourself alive in the winter, basically, which makes no sense.
It has some very particular mechanics that are not obvious. Like I got tripped up on plenty of things too.
Oof.
All right, moving on. Nuclear Throne. That's a game I played with my brother this year, and it's kind of a fun, like, classic top-down, almost like a Super Smash TV type game where you're controlling characters top-down. There's tons of enemies, like, running around, running at you.
Super Smash TV. Man, you're reaching way far back with the references for that one. Oh, Lord.
I don't know. What would you guys say is a more modern?
No, I don't.
One of the classic.
I mean, Smash TV works. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I played Nuclear Throne, and that makes sense to me.
I totally get it. It's just kind of funny that it's been like, what is it, like 20 years since that game came out, and that's still the best example of those kinds of games.
I mean, there have been other, like, I'd call it a dual joystick shooter. Like, there have been other games like that, but nothing that's really stood out in the past few years. So,
right.
I mean, Smash TV is probably as good a cultural benchmark as any.
Well, yeah, too. And, like, the other thing is like some dual joystick shooters, like, Stardust is more of like an arcadey Asteroids clone in a dual joystick shooter, whereas Smash TV, you had like weapons and progression and like, I don't know, this really difficult survival situation.
Yeah. And it's also got like some quote-unquote roguelike-ish elements as well. Like you go on runs in that game. You're not working through a set of levels where you save in between. Like it's all procedurally generated and run-based and that kind of stuff.
So, yeah, I like the roguelike elements. Also, it's one of those games, like my brother and I, we don't play as many games as we used to, but we actually played Smash TV together. And it's one of those games that's it's challenging and like it's kind of neat when a game like that gets its hooks into you. So he and I were jumping in and like trying to reach the end, which we did,
nice.
and beat the game.
Who's your favorite character?
That one's tough. I liked Eyes. He was probably one of my favorites. I liked Eyes, Fish, Crystal.
Yep.
A lot of the other characters were kind of wonky.
I remember playing Crystal a lot.
Crystal was good.
Yeah.
Brother played him a lot. All right, and the last game in my little mini sprint here is Orcs Must Die 2.
Did they not all die in the first one?
I was about to say, what did you do in the first one?
Well, I didn't play the first one, but I'm sure
Oh,
you
that's why they had to
kill
make a second one.
a lot of orcs
You
in
didn't
the
kill
first
them all
one.
the first time around.
I feel
Um,
like this game should have a subtitle of "There were more orcs."
and
I think
they're
there's at least one more they've made since then too.
Orcs Must
Yeah.
Die Unchained. It's in
Yep.
beta right now, so there's even more orcs. killed.
That's great.
Yeah, I guess it's not a totally unique concept, but it's not a very common concept. I haven't played Sanctum, but I'm guessing Sanctum might be sort of close. It's like a first-person
Yeah.
shooter third-person shooter / tower defense game.
Yeah, Sanctum's that same
Sanctum's-
kind of game,
Yeah.
but bad.
Orcs Must Die. I mean, it has a few little polished things here and there, but it's actually a really fun game, and it has they added co-op in 2. First one I think didn't have co-op, which makes it even more fun. So, basically you've got this tower defense game where you've got orcs coming at you, like different types of orcs coming at you from these different spawn points. You have some money where you can like put down traps, and you have your character. You have 2 different characters, and they each have loadouts. So like I might go into a mission like equipped with like a rocket launcher, a trinket that helps my mana regeneration, and like 4 different types of traps, like a ceiling trap, a wall trap, whatever. And there's actually a lot of tower defense variety and like the types of traps and weapons that you can use. And also it's just really kind of a funny and satisfying game. Like, one strategy that actually was halfway effective was like to line the floor with spring traps, and then like they would, if there were cliffs, like they would just throw like small orcs like just off the cliffs. So it
Nice.
kind of never got old hearing orcs scream "mommy" and like, I'm too young to die, and like watching them fly off cliffs while you blasted them with rocket launchers and crossbows.
Yeah, that sounds. That certainly sounds entertaining. Take a quick aside on Sanctum. The thing that Sanctum was missing was exactly what you were talking about, which is, sort of that kind of character kind of thing, where it's like, oh, this is like, this is funny. Sanctum was just a whole bunch of, wow, there's a bunch of aliens and they just blew everything up because I don't know how this game works, and that's pretty much where that game ended for me. But yeah, it sounds like it's a good game. You said there's a third one in development right now?
Yeah, they're trying to go free to play, I think.
Okay.
It's in beta now. I've played it a couple times with
It'll be in beta
Will.
for 5 years.
Yeah.
Who knows? But the first version we played wasn't that great, but they've made some updates, and it feels a lot more like the Orcs Must Die 2 formula.
Okay.
It's coming
All right.
along.
Well, now that we're through with the Ryan block, Mr. Bogard in the middle of the alphabet there, got a pair of Persona 4 games. Flex, why don't you talk about Persona 4 Dancing All Night?
Persona 4 lives forever.
Persona 4 never stops, baby.
And know what else never stops? The dancing.
The dancing.
Well,
Just go
until the end of night, and then
all
it stops.
night. But what if the night never stops? It's always night. That's the trick.
Oh, jeez.
Everything's great.
See? The June song is in that game, which makes it amazing.
I mean, if it wasn't for that, I don't know if this game should be on the list.
I was like, this game came out last year, and I was like, kind of hesitant to pick it up because it looked pretty silly, but at the same time, I really, really, really like Persona 4 music, and I like rhythm games, so eventually I broke down and I had to find out for myself, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I bought that game. Well, Steph bought that game, and she played it for a bit, and then I sat down to play it for a bit, and yeah, Persona 4, it's got some really good music.
It has some
Yeah.
really good music. Like,
You
it's
know?
and that's the thing. Like, I mean, when I played Persona 4 a few years ago, like, I really liked the music when I played it, and then playing this game, just kind of like that was kind of the thing I kept coming back to, is just driving home like how good that music really is. And they include, to be fair, Dancing All Night doesn't have the largest soundtrack, and they end up remixing, like, some of the Persona 4 songs are included multiple times with like different remixes, which
Right.
at first would seem like kind of a bummer, and then you realize like, oh wait, this song's so good that I do want to hear it 4 different ways. Um, and it ends up making for really different songs. And yeah, I ended up, it was kind of a slow build when I first started playing the game. I was like, yeah, okay, this is kind of a neat rhythm game. And then I just kept coming back to it, like I kept feeling drawn back to it, and I ended up playing that game like way more than I probably should have. But like I kept ramping the difficulty up and going through all the songs, and like it's like the rhythm mechanics are super simple, but it turns out if you have really amazing music, that goes a long way towards making a really fun rhythm game.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and then of course it has like all the style and charm of the Persona 4 universe. Like those characters are just great. Like all the art is great. Like freaking Nanako is still the best.
Nanako is the best. I just want to say that for everyone.
Yeah, I
So,
just
Flex.
want to hug Nanako.
So Flex, quick aside, where would you rank this in your pantheon of rhythm game experiences? Like just in a very high level, abstract.
Well, I mean, it's no Elite Beat Agents.
I mean, what is?
Nothing is. So, I mean, just go ahead and rule that out. And by the same token, it's no Unden. But, I mean, after that, like, I probably like Rhythm Heavens next. Like, those are pretty good. I mean, I always like... So, here's the weird thing, is after playing this, I came out of it really wanting a Dancing All Night DDR game. Like,
yeah.
That would maybe be, like, the best rhythm game ever made. So I also really like DDR. I would probably put this, somewhere around that. So, it's a few notches down. It's not my favorite just because the mechanics are, like, just very simple and straightforward. But, I mean, if we're going for best rhythm game soundtrack, now we might be having a fight up top. But, yeah, in the overall pantheon, yeah, like, it's probably a few notches down. Like, it could use a bigger soundtrack or some better mechanics. But, like, the mechanics...
There's some titans it would be up against.
Yeah.
Rhythm game titans.
Yeah, it could really rocket itself up there if it just had... I mean, the mechanics it has aren't bad, they're just very straightforward.
Right.
So, like... yeah, but man, like, it really is, like, Persona 4 is just a fun universe, and that music is just great. And, like, the rhythm mechanics are more than good enough to, like, service that awesome music. So, like, I had a lot of fun playing that game.
Yeah, I put about 2 hours or so, maybe a little more than that, into Dancing All Night, which pales in comparison to the 70 hours or so that I put into Persona 4 Golden, which is the next game on our list here.
Yep.
Yeah, Persona 4 is a really good game. Persona 4 Golden is the best version of that game, and it is definitely one of the few games that are in the conversation, at least, to be a system seller. Because I bought a PlayStation Vita. Yeah, I bought a Vita almost for the express purpose of playing Persona 4 Golden. I knew that, if you look hard enough, you're going to find a half a dozen games on basically any system that you can enjoy playing. But I did not do that research before going and buying the Vita. I just bought it, and I bought Persona 4 Golden, and it took me a little while to get into it because I was kind of terrified that I was making the wrong choices every day because you can't go back.
Yep.
But then once I realized that, it wasn't as restrictive as it seems at first glance, and I just sort of like let loose, I really enjoyed that game a lot. I think I ended up beating it sometime in the first quarter of this year, so it's been a while since I played it.
Yeah, that's a fantastic game. I mean, similarly to Paul, like, I bought my Vita. If it was just Persona 4, that wouldn't have been enough, but, like, I also think I probably wouldn't have bought a Vita if Persona 4 Golden didn't exist, so, like, it was definitely a big factor. And I played it, I don't know, 3 years ago or something, but I'm glad you put this on here, because even though I played it a few years ago, I've actually been thinking a lot about Persona 4 this year, and, like, as time has gone on, like, I think I've realized more and more, like, just how special of a game that is.
And it's really incredible for, I mean, a lot of different reasons, but the thing that really stuck out to me, and the thing that really got it on this list was this probably the best set of characters in a JRPG that I've personally have played. I'm not gonna say it's the best in the entire genre because the genre is enormous, right? But for all the JRPGs that I've played, that set of characters is probably the most well-developed, well-thought-out, set of characters that I've ever run across. I mean, minor spoiler. At some point late in the game, Nanako, who's your little cousin, who's kind of like your little sister in the game, she ends up getting captured. And, the game gives you a certain time period to go and basically rescue her. And, all my party members are like, hey, man, we got to think about this. And I'm like, screw you, there's a TV, I'm jumping into it, And, like, day one, I just ran in there and I grabbed Nanako. Because, like, no, you do not mess with Nanako. And that's, like, that doesn't happen in every game.
Jumping in the TV is still a fantastic thing that happens in that universe. Yeah, it's like such a stylistic, goofy universe, and like I totally agree with the characters. Like that might be, and I think that's why I've like kept thinking about it this year. Is like that might be my favorite like JRPG cast of characters in any JRPG I've played as well. Like they're super well written too. Like a lot of JRPGs just like beat you over the head with this giant like dialogue stick that's just super blunt and like and like
that's funny.
And like these characters are like incredibly well written. Like if they say something stupid that would be like very standard in any cliche JRPG, like another character will look at him and like call him out on it and be like, "Man, what? Shut up!" Like they're written in like a really weird, or not weird, in a really real way, and they can be weird in the way that like teenagers would be weird. They're not like they're not written as these cliched archetypes. Like their personalities really come out in that writing.
Yeah, they're believably real, and I think that's just one of those things. And it's kind of interesting too because the game also lends itself towards replayability, which you don't really ever think about when you look at like one of those incredibly long JRPGs, or even just an incredibly long RPG to begin with, Yeah. But
I mean, I'm not going to go spend those 90 hours again, but like because like you were saying with like the day structure, like you have to make the best use of the time you have because you don't have infinite time. So like that does make you think like, oh, like what if I had lived my life differently? Like what other things could have happened?
Right, and there's there's different endings to the game, which unless you're following a walkthrough, it's actually difficult to get the true ending. There's some dialogue options there that like, all right, you better pick the right one, or you're gonna get a different ending than what the best one is. So it's just kind of neat to think that even after you play it for so long, there is still content there that you could go back and discover if you had infinite time and infinite energy, which none of us really have. But I guess I'm saying it's more neat in theory than it is in practice with me. But I do really like that there's some branches there that you could explore otherwise.
I embraced my one playthrough and that was enough. But it is neat that there are those branches.
Yeah, but we're kind of going back to back with super, super long RPGs here. Nate, did you finish Pillars of Eternity?
I did.
Pillars is like half as long as Persona 4.
Yeah,
to be
it's
clear.
not.
It's still long though.
Yeah, I mean
it's
half
still
of
long.
90 is still long.
I mean exactly, like
And to be fair, I finished it with not doing very much of the side content in that game. So yeah, it definitely didn't take me anywhere near as long as it takes to finish Persona 4.
And the side content in Pillars isn't overwhelming either.
But yeah, I played that game over the summer. It's pretty cool, old school style, sort of that Baldur's Gate style of RPG, building your party, exploring areas, upgrading your characters, and finding equipment and spells and all that good stuff. But since it is an Obsidian game, am I remembering right? Is that the name of the studio?
Yes,
that's correct.
Since it is an Obsidian game, the writing and characters are just excellent and interesting to talk to and learn about the world from. They're really, really good at creating characters that are not just a bag of cliches and characters that every time you talk to them tell you something interesting about the world.
Yeah.
That's kind of their thing, I feel like, as far as writing goes.
Yeah. I mean, there are cliches in that game, but I think they play with those cliches in really fun ways.
Yeah, no character is just a cliche.
Right.
Like, there's always a reason why there's a cliche if there is one.
Yeah. Did you travel with Durant's?
I did travel with Terrence. He's a weirdo.
Dude's got some history to him.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much every time you talk to him and like hear some more of his life story, you're just like, I don't think I want to be near you, but I kind of want to always be near you.
Yeah. It's like I want to hear what you have to say, but I will also fear for my life.
Yes. Yeah, he's a really interesting character that fleshes out that world really, really well.
Yeah.
He's sort of the like Kreia of that game, if I can make a KOTOR 2 callback, where he just sort of treats everybody in the world with this kind of weird disdain and like thinks he knows better than everybody, but really he's just kind of a maniac.
Right.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
That game has a really cool world and a pretty cool, I would say, like central theme to it, where there's sort of the I don't know if we would call it a spirit world, but it's sort of like you can reach into the past and see memories of previous events and people, and like your ancestry has some impact on you as a person, each person in that world. Am I remembering all those details right?
Yeah,
as far as you
that sounds
remember?
right.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on there, you know.
Yeah. Did you like the way it wrapped up? I actually really like the ending of that game.
Yeah, it does some cool stuff at the end, sort of playing on your sort of more traditional fantasy storylines, because it is in sort of a D&D-ish world, and the way they turn some of the core tenets of that sort of high fantasy on its head is really cool.
Yeah.
I won't spoil exactly what the ending is about.
Yeah,
but
no need to spoil.
I would appreciate. Yeah.
I think that's a good. I think that's a good way to summarize at a high level.
But yeah, it is neat and worth seeing through to the end if you enjoy those types of games for sure.
Yeah, and yeah, like you said, it's just great world building, great writing, great characters.
Yeah. So, moving right along, no games that start with the letter R. It's not a good year for games that start with the letter R or U. But that's right. So next up on our list is StarCraft 2: Legacy of the Void.
I could have predicted last year that this would be my most played game of 2016, and it almost certainly was.
So I just played through the campaign. I'm pretty sure I never even booted up the multiplayer. I just wanted to see how the story would end, which, by the way, it just turned into the anime.
Yeah, it did. StarCraft has, with every new installment, becomes more and more anime.
Yeah, and I mean, at some point, you know, they just have to stop powering up, and then they finally got to the logical place, which is, hey, look, there's a god now, and you are it. Congratulations. Which is definitely the anime ending, if you've ever seen one.
It's really silly, but also entertaining. But, I mean, all of my playing, and I would guess all of Ryan's playing this year, was multiplayer. Like, we jumped down the 2v2 rabbit hole pretty hard, and it was just fantastic. Like, I got back into StarCraft in, you know, as much as I ever have, and just keeping up with all the changes, like really trying to improve, and like just all of that stuff. Like I feel like this year was StarCraft 2 or StarCraft multiplayer in general, like at its best, which means it's a whole lot of fun. Like if I was picking, you know, we're not picking winners for this category, but if I was picking like a personal quote unquote old game of the year, like this would pretty easily be it, because it was just StarCraft's awesome.
We talked about it too, I think, in GOTY chat last year, but the new metagame for StarCraft 2 is just snappier, faster, like it's more fun to watch, it's more fun to play, like, you know, you just kind of get in there, you have like maybe a minute of base building, which is one of the frustrations with a lot of RTSs, is that you spend 20 minutes building your base and then one person steamrolls the other. I feel like this metagame, like, rewards that a lot less.
Yeah. You're really getting into fights quick in this game.
At the 2 to 3 minute mark, like, you better be harassing or establishing map control or whatever. But yeah, and I mean, I think it's continued to improve. Like, I've dropped off a little bit on the watching, and we haven't played for the past couple months, but that's not because the game is worse in any way.
No.
It's just because we
At some point it becomes a
ran
big
out of
time sink.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like just so many like just great moments come out of playing that game. Like like we just had plenty of matches that just ended with really incredible exchanges and moments and just a lot of fun stuff.
Who landed the best storms?
Yeah. Get those corrosive bile bombs, get those storms, get Ryan's Tempest fleet coming in, get some Brood Lords, some Ultralists charging in.
Oh man, you guys are bringing back memories
The
of.
lurker balls.
See, the last time I really played that was Heart of the Swarm.
Vipers pulling Colossi.
Oh,
Just snagging them.
that's great.
Yeah, StarCraft
The
2
cheesiest
remains.
of the cheese. Eating those cheesers too. That
I'll
cheese
still
begets
one of my
cheese.
best memories is like us getting harassed by this double Zerg team just relentlessly, and like me just doing everything I can to just produce Zerglings and spine crawlers and hold on, and like totally thinking we're just dead. And then Ryan being like, I think we got it. And I'm like, what? And then I like look over to the other side of the map, and Ryan had dropped like 4 zealots in their base that had just killed everything. Because they were so all in, they couldn't stop 4 zealots.
That's
Oh
great.
no.
zealots at home.
Oh no.
It's good stuff.
That's pretty hilarious. Some of my best memories from that game just generally involve 4v4 craziness, and then I was like, hey guys, I got 100 battle cruisers.
Yeah.
I'm gonna 1A all the way across the map and just see what happens. Which
Yeah.
generally that didn't work out well, but still.
But yeah, StarCraft's still awesome.
StarCraft is still fun, even if it's sort of taking a backseat to the MOBA genre. But that's more of a genre thing, not a
in my
StarCraft
heart.
thing. Not in your heart. So, SteamWorld Heist.
Yeah.
Lex, tell us about it.
SteamWorld Heist is fantastic. I don't know. I know some of you played SteamWorld Dig.
Yeah.
This is, of course, by the same people, kind of in the same universe, but a very different kind of game. Like Dig was a actiony, like you're digging through the ground and like fighting enemies as you go and collecting money and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
SteamWorld Heist is almost more in line with like an XCOM style strategy game. Like it's a 2D side-scrolling perspective, but you are taking turns with your crew members, and you on your turn you have a move and a shoot action. And when you shoot, you actually have to line up the shots. So like your character, it's 2D and he's like moving their arms up and down. Sometimes you'll have like a laser pointer and stuff. But, like all the characters have very different abilities. So like some of them will have increased movement. Some of them will get like ricocheting bullets, and like they can all equip different weapons as well. Some of them will like have like healing or support abilities. So they end up coming up with like a really cool, diverse cast of characters with different abilities, and then just working through these 2D like side view tactical missions, and it ends up being really fun. Like it's pretty straightforward in the way that SteamWorld Dig was also straightforward, but like they have switched up the genre that they're working with, and like I'd say they execute it, with similar chops. I actually liked SteamWorld Heist better than SteamWorld Dig.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like Dig a good bit, and Heist is definitely on my list of games to play at some point soon.
Yeah, I think it's super fun.
Whenever I can.
Yeah, I even considered starting a New Game Plus when I finished it, because I heard the New Game Plus stuff like ramps up in a neat way, and I enjoyed that game quite a bit, but just ended up not putting the time into it. But yeah, SteamWorld Heist is definitely a fun little game, absolutely worth playing.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's it's not been on my list, but I think that's also just because like any good podcast does, we have different people that plays different genres, so we're not all playing the same thing.
I think I could be wrong. It might have been a PS Plus thing recently or currently.
I feel like I saw that somewhere, but I wasn't
It
going to
might
comment because I couldn't quite remember.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say any more without being known for sure, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I saw that somewhere, but yeah. So Nate, Tales from the Borderlands. I've heard good things about it, but I'm try and sell me on this game as someone who is not generally a fan of these kinds of games.
It's great.
So when you say these kinds of games, do you mean adventure games?
Yeah.
Or do you mean specifically the Telltale adventure games?
So it's kind of interesting because I never really enjoyed adventure games a ton back in their kind of like heyday. But I thought maybe I would enjoy some of the Telltale stuff a little more. So before I bought any of the games, I went and watched a Let's Play, and it just didn't really do a whole lot for me.
Which
and
one did
then
you
when
watch, out of curiosity?
Walking Dead, one of those seasons, it wasn't the first one. All I know is that Claire will remember that, or whatever her name was.
Yeah.
And then, so whatever. And Borderlands seems like a pretty narrow
I really
slice.
I really want to hear Nate's take, because I played this game last year and I really enjoyed it, but I'm really curious what Nate's take is.
So I don't love adventure games in general either. I've liked a couple of them that I've played over time, but I wouldn't consider myself an adventure game person. Tales from the Borderlands is probably, I can't off the top of my head, I'm not going to say unequivocally, but I can't think of any examples off the top of my head. It's probably the game that has made me laugh out loud more than just about anything I've ever played.
It's real funny.
The game is just so weird and goofy and bizarre. I mean, I could go through like 17 different scenes that I remember very clearly being hilarious. It's just moment after moment of just good silly fun.
In my mind, it's like the best video game comedy we've ever had.
Yeah.
Like,
so
they just they go like that game is all about humor. Like that's what they're going for. And
it's not even like, I think the Borderlands games 1 and 2 are the ones that I've played, like, try to go for a lot of humor and don't always hit.
No, they don't.
I don't actually think that those games are super funny in general.
Yeah, they have funny moments, but
they have funny moments, but in
Mr.
general,
Torque is hilarious.
Mr. Torque is hilarious.
That's all I'm gonna say. He is the best part of both of those games.
You're right about that. So like, think about the best moments from any of the other Borderlands games, and then it's like that. Those moments are happening constantly in Tales from the Borderlands.
Yeah, it's like that all the time. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's really the best thing I can say about it. Like, some of the characters are interesting. The plot overall, I think, is fine. It's not like amazing or anything, but you come to that game for the humor and you stay for the humor, and it's worth it every step of the way. I think that's probably my favorite adventure game that I've played.
That's what I was going to ask. Is like, I mean, because the first season of their Walking Dead got all the acclaim, and like that's the one that's kind of put on the pedestal as being like the crown jewel of adventure games. But I actually might like Tales of the Borderlands better.
Yeah, those are like totally opposite. Like, they play the same, obviously, but like Walking Dead goes for the emotional gut punch, and this goes for comedy. So they're totally different. Yeah. But I think this one maybe executes even on what it's going for better.
Yeah, I think that first season of The Walking Dead still had some slow moments where they were kind of like trying to shoehorn in like some puzzle gameplay things that just didn't quite work. And I think this game they've really realized, like, no, we just want to go for the story stuff at all times and just hit that best we can.
The one moment I have to just call out for this, other than Loaderbot as a character, who's just an amazing character.
Isn't he great?
The other moment is when you enter, like, basically the bad guy base.
Yeah, I think I know exactly where you're going with this.
And they're just all these, like, smarmy, like, slimy businessmen who are all, like, backstabbing each other, and it's like, that's the Borderlands bad guys, right? So, but you walk in and you're trying to blend in, and you end up, I don't remember exactly how, but you end up getting into a finger gun fight.
Yeah.
Where
so there's a running gag throughout the series with, like, we're talking about, Paul, like business guns, like, that kind of stuff.
They're all giving business guns to each other all the time, just being slime balls, and you end up getting into like this big quote unquote shootout where everybody's just using finger guns, and like everybody's totally in on it, on the joke, and like totally reacting the way it would if it was a real fight, but it just goes on and on and on.
It's not just pistols. Like, they have assault rifles, SMGs, like shotguns, grenades. Like, they have the full array of imaginary weaponry. It is amazing.
It is probably the best scene of comedy I've ever experienced in a video game.
Yeah, it is incredible.
Well, you've given me something new to put into my YouTube queue now, because that sounds amazing.
Yeah,
it's
good.
great.
All right. Well, maybe I'll give that one another shot. I just, not being a huge fan of Telltale myself,
Yeah.
I didn't really know that was something that I'd be interested in, but you definitely piqued my interest there a little bit.
And Loaderbot's the man.
And Loaderbot's the man, it sounds like.
Loaderbot is the man.
So the very last game on our old game shoutouts is one that I put on here, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which is kind of interesting for me to put on here for a couple of reasons. Number one, I have read various publications that have had The Witcher 3 DLC, not Heart of Stone. What was the other one?
Blood and Wine.
Yeah, so I read various publications that actually talk about Blood and Wine being Game of the Year this year, which is kind of crazy because that is, quote unquote, just a DLC.
Right.
But that just kind of goes, I think really speaks to the quality of the writing.
I bet that DLC is a lot bigger than most video games.
Yeah.
It's about 50 hours long. So
It's longer than Pillars of Eternity.
It's
also our last year discussions of Game of the Year with this similar group was we gave our Game of the Year to The Witcher 3.
Yeah.
Not the actual best Game of the Year, but
I'm pretty sure it was. We can go back to the tapes. It was unanimous.
We still have that uploaded somewhere, I'm sure.
Yep.
So I got into The Witcher a little bit late, mainly because I was silly and thought that I had to play The Witcher 1 and 2 before I could play Witcher 3, and that just seemed like a completely overbearing task to ever take on. And then one day, I don't know whether or not I'd had some realization or whether I'd had too much scotch. I'm like, screw it, I'm playing The Witcher 3, and so I started playing that this year, and man. That's a real good game, guys. The writing's great. The actual gameplay itself, I think is really fun. Once you turn the difficulty down to be a superhero.
I don't necessarily think the gameplay is amazing. I think it's serviceable. That combat never really gripped me, but it never really put me off either. But now that we're a year out, I kind of thought this last year, but I feel pretty confident now, a year out, saying that for my money, The Witcher 3 is the best written and best acted video game I've ever played.
Yeah, it's real good at that stuff.
Yeah, so I'm probably halfway through it now, somewhere thereabouts. And in the Steam sale, I actually picked up The Witcher 3 on PC, even though I've actually have my save files on PS4. So at some point or the other, I do plan on going back and doing some more witching on the PC. But yeah, as far as games that I've been playing this year that have been really good, that one's been definitely near the top for the stuff that I've been playing this year. So I'm happy I got into it. I'm a little bit late, but still, that is a real good video game, and I'm glad that I was able to sit down and kind of sink my teeth into it.
Better late than never.
Yep. So that concludes all of our old game shoutouts.
Yeah.
So
and just to kind of close that off, we wanted to do this because we can't get to every game every year, and that means games spill into later years. So some of these games have been things we probably wanted to play for a while, and we just wanted to give them their props.
Yeah, although, Doom from 1993, you've been putting that one off for quite a while.
Yeah, well, sometimes it takes a little bit.
Well, now we can get to the real 2016.
Yes.
Yep. Out with the old.
We are going to take a quick break, but then whenever we come back, we're going to jump into our best sounding game of the year. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our ATACS Game of the Year Day 1 podcast. We have just finished going through our old games that did not come out in 2016, but we enjoyed nonetheless and wanted to give shout-outs to. But now we enter the wrestling ring we enter the battle royal, we enter the place where we might say some things that we regret later. We are here to... well, we'll see about our first category for game of the year is the...
Real quick, I'll just say, we of course can't play every game, so like if your favorite game we don't talk about because, I don't know, you like this year's wrestling game or something, like we probably just didn't play it.
We played every game, literally, and we hate your video game.
All right, fair enough.
That's how it works.
Exactly what we're saying. But our first category is the best sounding game. And these are the games that we just think have great sound, as the title implies. Now, this can be sound effects, it could be voice acting, it could be music. And so we're not being specific. If you can hear it with your ears, then it's a sound. And
this didn't start out as best music, but we broadened it.
That's right.
Because we had to. Because best music was a little too much into this one little corner. So we have a few games here on the list, and I'm just gonna read them off, and then we'll start sorting through them.
Yeah, what are we working with?
We are working with Banner Saga 2, Devil Daggers, Abzu, Dark Souls 3, Mobius Final Fantasy, World of Warcraft Legion, Thumper, Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, Tokyo Mirage Sessions FE, Owlboy, Hyper Light Drifter, Doom, winner, Firewatch, Final Fantasy 15, and Fury.
You can't do that.
I don't know what you're talking about.
For future reference, the appropriate pronunciation is Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE.
Okay, sorry.
The appropriate pronunciation is Doom.
Doom.
No, the appropriate pronunciation is Doom.
Doom. That's definitely going to throw off the audio levels there. I probably shouldn't do that again. There's a couple of Final Fantasy games on here. Why don't we talk about Mobius Final Fantasy first? Who put that up as a suggestion?
That's one I dropped in there. I'm going to talk about this game a little bit on the most surprising track
quick,
as well.
We didn't say this. So for these next four categories, we are having fights and picking winners. So in that long list of games Paul just read off, we're narrowing it down to a group of three that are our top three, and then we will pick one winner among those three. So we have one winner and two runners-up.
Yep.
That's true. Anyway, back to Mobius Final Fantasy. So yeah, that's a game. I'll talk about it a little bit in most surprising. But in the best sound category, I was actually really impressed with that. It's a mobile game. The name may or may not imply that, by Square Enix. And for a mobile game, it actually has pretty good sound, voice acting. It has voice acting, which is actually pretty entertaining, and it has solid music. And just to elaborate a little bit more on that, so the game has a class system, and depending on which class you are, there'll be a different soundtrack in the battle, and there are a lot of classes. And then the game also has a world map with different areas, and the different areas have different overworld themes. So the game has a lot of music, and because it's a Square Enix game, it has a pretty wide variety, ranging from more traditional fantasy instrumental to some more modern electronic, fast beat stuff.
That Ranger theme seems pretty bumpin'.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I've not played that. Has anyone else played Mobius Final Fantasy or no?
Not I.
No. All right. So Ryan, have you played Final Fantasy 15?
Ryan's gonna have to sell it as a top three.
Yeah, he's gonna have to work hard.
That's okay.
So have you played Final Fantasy 15, Ryan?
Yes.
Okay, so
I've played about 10 hours of 15.
Okay, well, so in between Mobius Final Fantasy and Final Fantasy 15, I'm gonna make an assumption that 15 probably has the better sound. But is Mobius closer than what you would have expected for it being a mobile game, or is it just as far away as you would probably expect it to be?
I mean, I don't know that I'll argue for Mobius to be one of the top contenders here, but just to say, for a mobile game, like the fact that it had voice acting, the voice acting was good, and the soundtrack for like the different classes and overworlds was pretty varied, and so there were certainly themes in there that were worthwhile. I wanted to give it its props.
Yeah, I do like the idea of different themes for different classes and stuff, and the few songs I've heard seem pretty cool. I haven't heard any of the voice acting or anything else, but the music does seem neat.
Echo, your fairy companion there, who annoys you to death, as a great voice actor.
That's funny. So I'm going to jump over to one of the games that I added to this list, which is World of Warcraft Legion. I really don't think that it's going to be a contender for the top 3. I just wanted to give it a quick shout out. The voice acting in the game is really what I want to give the shout out to. There are several cinematics that Blizzard has added as part of the new expansion. They've actually done a lot inside of their game engine to where you do see a lot more cinematics, and they're not all FMVs. A decent number of them are just in-engine cinematics. There's a lot more voice acting in Legion than what there's been in the previous expansions, and for what's there is actually very good. And it's a really it's a nice way to tie up story bits, and it's a nice way to use a lot of music that you don't normally hear, plus the voice acting to tie up long quest chains in a way that makes them feel meaningful. So we're going to talk about Legion later on in our podcast, but I will say that the sound design for that game really did a lot to kind of pull all of that together into a presentation that has been lacking for a couple of expansions now. So
yeah,
I just wanted
remember
to give them a
liking
quick
the
shout
music
out.
in Vanilla WoW.
Yeah.
I don't know how WoW has progressed over the years and over the expansions, but I mean, when Blizzard brings its big guns, like it does that stuff well.
Yeah, Warcraft
Yeah.
has a pretty cool musical sound to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool to hear that the voice acting in that game is pretty great, and that just in kind of a meta point, like we talked about broadening the category from music to sound in general. Like the voice acting for several of these games was one of the impetuses for that, because this year had some great voice acting.
Yeah, there's at least 1 or 2 games that I added to this list once we broadened it purely for voice acting.
Yeah. So that's my little bit about Legion. Like I say, I'm not gonna make a big push to bring that into the top 3, but I did want to give some credit where credit's due. Blizzard did a great job with that. But like I say, we'll be talking about that later on in some of our other categories. Why don't we move right along to Thumper?
Bust out your percussion.
That's a game.
This was actually one when it was just best music. I wasn't gonna even list it, but when you expand it to sounds, like that game is and its visuals feed into it as well. But like Thumper is a game that just assaults your senses. Like it is all about just like enveloping you in this weird space and just sucking you into that zone, and like you almost get into a weird trance in a way, and you're riding along that track, hitting those beats, but like the way hitting those beats like plays into the sound, and then like the background sound that is going on and kind of driving the those beats and that progression. Like I even hesitate to call it music, because it's mostly just like a bunch of
almost not.
Yeah, it's almost like just a bunch of banging and clanging and like that kind of stuff. But like it really fits in with the vibe of that game really well. Like that game is really aggressive in a striking way, and like the vast majority of that is in the audio design. Like it sounds really cool.
Yeah, I think that the game, a lot of those levels do sound pretty cool if you're hitting all the stuff in the level, but that's so hard that it almost never happens.
Yeah, it's a tough game.
So you kind of get like, at least when I'm playing, you get more of like a mishmash of like, oh, here are a couple beats, and then some misses, and then here are a couple more beats, and then I exploded.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're missing, kind of going back and forth between missing and hitting stuff, like, yeah, it can start to sound a little off. But, like, I still think it sounds, like, there were definitely moments when I was playing that game where, like, I'd get on a stretch and I'm like, oh, like, you would just start feeling that flow.
Yes.
And you just get into that rhythm, and it just feels amazing, and most of that's because of the audio.
Yeah, when you do get into those rhythms, it is really cool, and that's the visuals and the audio and the sort of gameplay all tying together really well.
Yeah. Like it
Okay.
becomes a fairly mesmerizing experience. Like it's not one of my personal top 3 of the year, so like I
Right.
don't think it's gonna hang, but like it definitely deserves props for like its audio design, because like I mean like that's kind of the main thing this game has is its
Yeah.
audio, like being
I mean,
a rhythm game.
it's a rhythm game, so
Yeah. It is rhythm violence.
rhythm violence.
Rhythm violence. All right, so I've not played Thumper. I feel like I've heard a lot of discussion about it, but it sounds like it's not high enough on you guys' personal list to really try and make a push into the top 3. So we'll move on from there. Let's go to the biggest budget game I think that we have on this entire list, which is Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. Don't actually fact check me on that. I have no idea how much these games cost.
I
just know that one
think
was expensive.
Final
you're
Fantasy
probably right.
15 might be
Well, yeah, you're
the
right
game that
about
Well,
got the most
yeah.
money
As soon as
sunk
I said
into
that,
it.
I will. Yeah, as soon as I said that, I went down to 15, and I went, that's been in development for 10
I have
years.
not
I am
fact checked
very
any of
about
this, but I feel
Hopefully
pretty
no one will call me
confident
out on it
saying that
next
Final
time.
Fantasy 15 might have had the biggest budget.
But anyway, Uncharted 4: A Thief's End, super AAA.
Yeah.
You're basically playing a movie. It is incredible in terms of its graphics, but I have not played it. So someone else other than me talk about why it's here on our best sounding list.
And
Think-
this is candidate number 1 for pulling it in for best sound, and not just best music.
Yeah,
like
this game is really good voice acting, is why it's here, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
Nolan
it's
North still the voice of Nathan Drake.
Yep, he's
Yep.
still tearing
rocking
it up. Yeah, and oh, what's his face?
Accompanied by Troy Baker this time, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
So Nathan Drake's brother is a big character who's introduced in this game, and he is voiced by Troy Baker, who does a fantastic job as always as well. And then
Yep.
the other main character, Elena Fisher, is voiced by Emily Rose, who has voiced Elena in all the games and continues to do a fantastic job.
Yeah, all of those characters are so good.
Yeah.
In their voice work.
Yeah. Like that trio has, like, they really carry that game. Like they drive.
Yeah.
Like the performance of those 3 characters like really drives the heart of Uncharted 4 and like makes it what it is, and a lot of that is in their performance, which is both motion capture and voice performance, and like their voice performance is just phenomenal.
Mhm.
And it's hard to explain like why voice acting can be so good, but like they really convey a lot of subtlety in their voice work that like just conveying raw information through words would like it goes beyond that. Like
Yeah.
you can hear like disappointment in their voices or something like that. Like they do a really good job at kind of running the emotional gamut.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me like it's a couple of things. It sounds to me like it's well written, but
Yeah.
it's also well acted in a way, or at least a quality of voice acting that you don't always get inside of the video game sphere.
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
really the combination of the really top-notch writing, the incredible voice work that they do, and then the facial animations that the developers put into the game, and all of those come together. It really is like watching a movie when those characters are talking. Like you're thinking of them not in video game terms at that point, because it's sort of transcended that.
Yeah. If the like the background musical score was better, I would probably push for this game to be a top 3. I don't,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of these other ones like are more of a complete package.
Yeah,
I
I don't
don't-
think its musical score is in it anything super special. It's more of what that game or series has always been.
Yeah.
And it's good. It's just not like anything amazing.
Yeah, it's definitely very good, but yeah, it's like
Yeah.
not something I like that I end up remembering.
Mhm.
I don't know if you'd. I'm not really going to make a push for it in top 3. I don't know if you would, Nate.
I think there are other ones on here that I would push for a lot more than this one. But the voice acting definitely deserves recognition.
Oh, absolutely. Like if this was best voice acting, this would probably be my winner.
Yeah.
Like I think the voice acting here is incredible.
But in terms of overall sound, I think
Yeah.
there are other games on this. There are at least 3 other games on this list that do sort of all the things that they do better.
Yeah, and I think the general sound effects, like gunfights and stuff in Uncharted, never sounded amazing either. I mean, they're not bad, but they're
fine.
They're pretty
they're just
stock.
sort of standard, yeah.
Yeah. I will say, we linked some dialogue clips in this document. In one of them, Nolan North, aka Nathan Drake, makes a pretty hilarious, like, "Are you scared, chicken" kind of sound effects, and it's really hilarious.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll find a way to edit that into our podcast right now. Okay. Anyway,
we'll figure out that magic later.
Either that'll work and it'll be cool, or it won't work and it'll just be weird and funny.
Either or. We strive to be entertaining here. All right. So we've gone through 4 games. None of them were really feeling to push up to the top 3. What about Dark Souls 3? I'm a little surprised to see it on here at all.
I was kind of hesitant to put it on here. And, like, I mean, Dark Souls has always had really good music, and I think this is the best soundtrack they've had yet, by actually a good margin. Like, I think they really stepped up their game on this one. Especially all of, like, the boss themes are really good. The main reason I put it on, though, is that final boss theme is... like, if we were going for best song of the year, that final boss theme might be my pick. Like, I think that one theme is just incredible.
It's real good.
Yeah, like...
And the way it calls back to the final boss of Dark Souls 1 is also a really nice touch, which that whole game is a lot of callbacks.
Yeah. I mean, Dark Souls 3 is basically, like, Reference Machine the game. To previous From Software games.
So then when you get to the final boss and then he's in his, like, final stages, it's like the piano theme from the final boss of Dark Souls 1 starts to creep up within the final boss theme of Dark Souls 3, and it's just a really effective, like, cool moment in that fight.
Yeah, that was a real, like, this game had, like, a lot of its callbacks didn't necessarily work for me, but 2 or 3 of them hit me actually pretty hard, and this was one of them, and it's because of the music. Like, that theme, the way it wraps back in with Dark Souls 1 and kind of, you know, it's tying a bow on this trilogy of games, as they said it's going to be their last one for the indefinite future. Like, it was really effective. And I mean, it kind of, you know, they're tying up the story and everything else too. Like, it really, like, when that music kicks in, like, it really brings it back. Like, it's a really powerful moment.
Yeah, that music takes what would have otherwise been a fairly rote final boss and actually makes it kind of like a big moment.
Yeah, like this is like Exhibit A for a song, like really elevating a moment in a game to like multiple levels higher than it should be.
Yeah.
So are we? So for that game, it sounds like the consensus is a couple of really good pieces, but not a full enough package to elevate
it absolutely doesn't deserve to be top 3 because the full package is not there, but it deserved a shout out because of the way its music creates these moments. And like the final boss theme is by far the highlight, but like a lot of the other boss themes are also really good.
Yeah.
The you know, the voice work's pretty terrible. Like all the Souls games voice work.
Those games always have really weird voices.
Yeah, they all sound like that they're in like a cardboard box.
Yeah, exactly.
Weird.
I really want Pancake Face back so she can say the world might be mended some more.
Yeah.
That really awkward voice, but you know.
Yeah. I overall the game I don't think hangs in best sounding, but it does have those cool moments that are worth noting. Yeah,
it does not hang with some of the other games we have on there, but it needed props for those moments because that final boss, like if we were doing top 3, like I said, if we were doing top 3 songs of the year, that final boss theme might be in it.
Yeah.
All right. So sticking with the darker side of things, Devil Daggers.
Yeah, Devil Daggers.
I'm a little curious what prompted this one being on the list.
So I'm taking a little bit of liberty with best sounding in this case, I guess.
Best sounds.
Yeah, the game doesn't really have music, and it doesn't sound good or appealing in any way.
I think you're missing the point of this category.
It's effective, I would say.
I mean, I'm joking, but I do get what you're going for. Like, it uses a lot of ambiance and like unsettling noises. Yeah. Which works like that game's advantage.
Yeah, there's just sort of like this weird, crunchy demonic background noise where it's just like skulls rolling down a hill or something. I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, it's
then
yeah.
all the sounds that the enemies make are, I mean, this doesn't probably factor into this category, but like the sounds that are being made by different enemies as they spawn in and move around is actually useful for gameplay.
Oh, I think that totally factors in.
Okay. So yeah, when you hear
sound.
different things, you know what has spawned in, and you can kind of tell where they are. Like if you're wearing headphones, you can tell positioning of enemies, and that's super important because that whole game is about enemy placement management. So I think that it deserves recognition for that at least, and it just the way the sounds all start to mix, it becomes kind of this overwhelming cacophony of demonic invasion the further you get into the game, because basically it's a time attack thing. You last as long as you can.
Yeah.
And so the longer you last, the more enemies keep spawning in over time, and so they're all making sounds, and as more and more pile up, it just becomes sort of this overwhelming heightened tension experience because you just hear them all around you.
Yeah.
And so I think the sound is actually super effective in that game. I wouldn't say like it's pleasant or anything like that.
But it's not meant to be.
But it's not meant to be. It's definitely unsettling in the way that they intended.
Yeah, like this is not a game that there's anything quote unquote good about how it sounds, but it sounds in a very particular way to fit into both the theme and the gameplay of the game. Like it's meant to make it like, and in that sense, the sound makes it a better game.
Yes,
so,
it does, absolutely.
That makes it, you know,
the sound is a huge part of that game, and so I think it's cool. I don't think it's a top 3 again. I think we can take it off, but
that was actually a better argument than I was expecting.
I mean, unless other people want to ride that train with me, I'm willing to go there. But
I mean, I've got my eye on 2 particular games, so I don't know if my other 2 make it. Maybe I'll join you in on the Devil Daggers train.
Maybe we'll come back and revisit it, but I think that one's gonna be hard to hang.
I don't think it's gonna make it.
So next thing I wanted to talk about was the Banner Saga 2. I actually enjoyed the music from Banner Saga 1. I thought it was nice and, airy and a few other adjectives. But I haven't played Banner Saga 2, so what about it?
My big drawback for Banner Saga 2 soundtrack is it's very similar to Banner Saga 1.
Right, more of the same.
Yeah.
Right.
If it weren't for that, I would make a harder push for it. But it is mostly the same music, but it is incredibly good music. Like it kind of has that, like the Banner Saga takes place in this like almost Viking style setting. Like it's all snowy and everyone's got axes and shields walking around their longbows and all that stuff, and like it really fits that vibe super well.
Yeah. Lots of horns and drums and very manly men chanting and humming.
Yeah, and that's actually my favorite stuff in Banner Saga 2 is I think they have more of that humming and chanting stuff. And there's one song in particular that occurs at the very end of the game that I think is fantastic, and it's a new song that wasn't in the first game. So like I think there is some fantastic music in here.
YouTube music video is pretty great too.
Yeah.
Mixing between like the chorus of the Norse guys and cutscenes from the game. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. That's where that last song I was talking about. They did a cool music video for that one. I think that game, that the soundtrack's just super atmospheric and like just fits that game to a T.
I agree with you though that it's a lot of the same.
Yeah, it is very much a lot of the same, and the rest of the sound doesn't really back it up necessarily either. I mean, the composer for this, Austin Wintory, like he's becoming known as like an amazing soundtrack machine, and
really?
like he's done like this is good work. Like he is very good at composing music, like quality music, and this is among that. Like he's just good.
Okay. So, and I mean, I guess there's also something to be said that style or that setting of game really only lends itself to a style of music that you can only explore so much. So maybe that's why the 2 games are similar music.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's also like I'm a big proponent that like music fitting the tone and style of a game is really important, and like Banner Saga 2, like there are a lot of sequels in video game, but Banner Saga 2 might be the most sequel there is, because it literally picks up right where the first game left off and just continues. So like,
Okay.
it would actually probably be kind of jarring if it was different music. Like in the first game, they found a soundtrack that nailed that style so well, and like I kind of wouldn't want them to change it up, but at the same time, that does make it stand out less.
Okay. All right. So Banner Saga 2 sounds like we like the music, but we're still not going to say it's a contender for one of our top 3 spots.
Yeah, I wouldn't, just for lack of originality.
Okay. Next up on the list, we have Abzu. Abzu. Is that how you say that?
I've always heard it pronounced Abzu,
Okay.
but
Abzu.
I don't actually know, so don't quote me on that.
All right.
Speaking of Austin Wintory doing work,
Yeah, is that him too?
this is also Austin Wintory. He was turning him out this year. I mean, this game, Austin Wintory is most well known for Journey. He did the soundtrack for that, which won a Grammy.
Oh.
So he's got some big chops there, and Abzu is often described as an underwater journey, and it's composed by Austin Wintory, so you're getting very similar stuff to what Journey did, but I think he's found a way to like tweak it to, because like Journey was a lot in the desert and sand, and Abzu is underwater. So like I think he's found a way to like tweak that emotional, orchestrated, like sweeping musical score and adapt it to like an underwater environment really effectively.
It seemed really nice from the stuff. I haven't played the game, but
Yeah.
from listening to some of the music, it seemed like very nice orchestral stuff.
Mhm.
Did you? What would you say? I guess about the variety of it, or like if it ties into the environments that you're moving through, or things like that.
Yeah, it does. The variety isn't necessarily. I wouldn't say a variety is its strong suit. It does change as you go, and the timing of when it changes is probably the more effective part, because as you enter new areas and new scenes, like the music fades from one track into another, like right on point.
Right.
And like that stuff is super effective. The like core, like if you were just like sampling the soundtrack and like you listen to one point of it and then listen to another point of it like 5 tracks later, then it would probably sound fairly similar, but
Right.
very much like Journey, it's
But you feel
those-
like it was like
those subtle
a part of you moving through the world,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's those subtle changes in the soundtrack that adapt as you move through the world. Like there's no jarring changes, but it like, Journey was called Journey, and Abzu is very much a journey as well.
Sure,
And
yeah.
like the soundtrack guides your journey emotionally. Like it's slowly evolving and adapting as you go, and it's really impressive in that way.
Yeah.
Like it's very similar to Journey, and I think in a lot of ways it's probably about as good as Journey,
Mhm.
but almost kind of similar to Banner Saga, like because it is very similar to Journey. Like,
Okay. Do you think it is similar enough that hurts that it's on this list at least?
Kind of, yeah. Like if
Okay.
I was making a personal top 3 or 4, Abzu actually might be around that borderline mark. So like,
Yeah.
it's. I really wish someone else had played it, because like I feel like only me having played it, like it's not gonna hang in the top 3 because it's like borderline for me by myself.
Mhm.
But if someone
mean-
else had played it, I'd be curious if that would give it more weight.
From me listening to some of the music on its own and having seen a little bit of the gameplay, like I think I could go on board with Abzu with you if you wanted to make
Yeah.
a case for that being in the top 3.
Well, let's hold on to it just for now, just to see how the
Yeah.
other games go. I have a feeling it's not going to make it, but
Yeah, it may not.
It is really good in the way that Journey is really good.
Yeah.
So we'll hang on to it for now just in case, because we'll see how some of these other ones shakes out. I mean, we have some.
We've
we have
still
some
got
heavy,
a lot of
we have
really
some
good
heavy
stuff
hitters
on
left
here.
for sure, but I mean, I think for pure. Here's what I'll say: for pure like quality of sound and composition, I think Abzu definitely is top 3.
Yeah.
For like originality or being something like that's really striking in a video game,
Right.
it maybe doesn't stand out quite as much as some of these other games we have left. If that
Okay.
makes any sense.
I think it does. I think we should move on to some of these other ones and
It's
see where
very
we
good,
end
but
up.
not surprising. I'll put it that way.
Right.
So, I don't know. That's a pretty impassioned case for Abzu. I'm curious to see how the rest of it shakes out. I don't know that I want to cross it off the list just yet. I just want to leave it for
We'll hang on
for
to
a
it
minute.
now.
Let's talk about some of the other games that we actually do think are in the conversation for what might be in our top three. And I'm gonna jump around a little bit. The first one that I want to jump into is Final Fantasy 15, actually, because Final Fantasy, it's got a lot of good music. There are rhythm games based off of its music.
You asked me about rhythm games earlier, Ryan. Theat Rhythm's near the top. I totally forgot that. Elite Beat Agents number 1, Theat Rhythm number 2. That's
I was
the order.
wondering. Theat Rhythm was on my mind. I was like, where does Persona 4 versus Theat Rhythm?
Yep. Elite
Theat
Beat
Rhythm
Agents
is
1, Theat Rhythm 2, everything else third.
And if this was 2014, then Theat Rhythm would be winning this category. So Final Fantasy 15, in development for a decade. Primary composer was Yoko Shimomura. This is the same composer that did, Parasite Eve, Mario RPG. Is also the composer for upcoming Kingdom Hearts 3 whenever they decide to ship that sometime in 2027, I'm sure. Man, that game, it has some great voice acting, English and Japanese. It has some great music, and it's got some really solid sound effects. I think the voice acting is fine. I mean, whether you're listening to the Japanese or the English track, I mean, I actually am a fan of it.
It's
I think
hot out here. Well, then take off your jacket.
I agree, actually, with Paul. Like, I mean, they have so much banter in that game. There's definitely like some lines that come off as a little like, whether you want to say forced or just kind of pointless, but there are definitely a lot of times where they just nail it. Like, I remember one particular instance, I was at Galden Key, and it's like this really pretty resort, and I'm running around at night, and one of the characters comments, like, he's like, man, it's so pretty here at night, and then the other three jump right in, and they're like, and you get to spend it with us. It's like, you are a lucky man. And it just, like, it's so effective. Like,
yeah, there are some great voice. My favorite voice touch is, I think some of those lines, like, I'm 10 hours in, and, like, some of those lines are already grating on me. But I really, oh, geez, yeah. I really like some of the little touches, like humming the battle theme after a battle.
Yes.
Or the victory theme, rather.
Yes,
like,
that's
really
so
cool.
good.
they have a lot of really good voice touches. And the music, like Paul was mentioning, they have some effective uses of the music. Like, when you're driving in the car, you can cycle through, like, old Final Fantasy.
So, yeah, I was about to say, the best part is that you can pop a CD of Final Fantasy VIII soundtrack to your car and listen to Shufflin' Boogie as if you were playing Triple Triad, and that's freaking ballin'.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and like, I know that we have a lot of other games to sort of like trying to get through and sort, but at least for me, when I was looking at this list, my personal number one is probably Final Fantasy 15. I really do think that they nailed it in a lot of different places. And while some of the stuff may end up being a little bit repetitive with some of their voice acting, that's more or less, I mean, like that, it's just a whole lot of, of lines that you really do need to fill a lot of space with. And yeah, you do hear it a lot, but I don't know. I think that they're all their personalities are really, really endearing to me. And I think that this is one of the first games on this list that, that really does present a total package, from the music to the sound quality to the voice acting. I like it a lot. So I think that, at least for me, on my personal list, this would definitely be near the very top.
Yeah, we definitely want to hang on to it for now. For me, what I've played, I don't think the voice acting is consistently strong. Like, I think there's some amusing dialogue in there, but I don't think the delivery on the voice acting is that good. At least not consistently. And I think a lot of the background music is, there are some good themes in there, but I think a lot of it kind of devolves into generic like JRPG background noise. Um, I feel like this composer probably did Final Fantasy 13 soundtrack because it sounds pretty similar to that in a lot of spots. That's just my rough guess off the cusp, but it's not bad by any stretch, but it also rarely stands out to me. Like I think the battle themes are good, but a lot of the like just kind of wandering around the overworld stuff is not good. Like I mean, it's kind of telling that when I'm driving in the car, I want to listen to the old Final Fantasy music instead of the new Final Fantasy music.
That's just nostalgia talking.
I mean, whether it is or isn't, it still says something that the new music isn't doing it for me.
I mean, I guess it's from the Kingsglaive, technically from the Kingsglaive soundtrack, but there are one or two of the new songs that I actually will listen to in the driving sequences. But I mean, the other thing too is like when you're in the driving sequences, like, you know, you're going to hear the new music in other parts of the game. But, you know, that's when you can, if you want to flip back to some of the old music and skim around, like that's a good opportunity for it. So I don't know if I would quite get behind that argument 100%.
Well, I mean, I think that we've probably, you know, come to consensus that we should hang on to Final Fantasy 15 before we talk about everything else. But yeah, that's one of my favorites. But a game that I did not get around to playing, Firewatch. So, Flex, you played a lot of Firewatch, right?
Yep, Nate and I both played through this.
So, give us your spiel on that one.
So, Firewatch comes from two angles really strongly. First, the soundtrack. So, Firewatch is about like you're out in National Park Old Shoshone, and you're by yourself most of the game, and you kind of talk on radio with one other person. But a lot of the time, you're out exploring the forest, and like it has this, and it's in the summer, and it has this really like chill. I won't necessarily say explorative, but it's just kind of like it's just like a really lot of like nice guitar and strings and like kind of. I won't say quite ambient because it's like a little more present than that, but it's like just really good I'm walking out in the woods kind of music, and it's like it really fits the themes of that game really well, of kind of being out in the woods by yourself. And there are a few songs in there that are really effective at like kind of drumming up the right emotions at the right time, whether it's suspense or surprise or just melancholy, like whatever it's going for, like it really kind of hits those notes. And it feels like, and sometimes it even feels like good campfire music, like you'd get, you know, when you're out at a big park or something. And then on the other end, like if Uncharted 4 was Exhibit A for good voice acting, I think this is Exhibit B. Like I think this is the other game this year, for me at least, that like really nails the delivery of voice work in a way that conveys, like the intonation of their voice work conveys just as much as the words they're saying. And like when video games stumble in voice work, I think that's where they stumble on the execution. And like Firewatch is one that gets that part of the execution right where so many others don't. And I think that's really effective for its storytelling.
You literally never see the other character in the game.
Yeah, Delilah.
But she has so much personality.
Yeah.
Through your radio conversations that it is literally 100% voice work, and it's just a really, really good performance, and by the main character too.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah. Yeah. That those voice works really define those characters in a pretty profound way.
And I do think the music adds a lot to the environment to that game, like the sort of introduction sequence where you're walking up to the tower. The song that's playing during that is really good. A lot of good, like you said, guitar work and piano work going on in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be, I think, pretty easily one of my top three.
I think Nate's probably the one that has the bigger push on this. Like for my top three, it's kind of borderline. I will say I like it better than the other game we've or another game we've already talked about, and that I think I like both its soundtrack better than Final Fantasy 15, and I think I think the bigger gap is I think the voice work is way better. So if we're making that comparison, I think that's where I stand on that one. I don't know that either of them end up making top 3, but
Yeah, they may not. We've still got a lot to go through here.
Yeah, let's maybe hold on to it for now. I like the samples I listened to, but I didn't play it. We're talking about Firewatch.
Yep.
But yeah, I think let's see how the other games shake out and see if we can shrink the list down a little bit.
Yeah. So why don't we jump on down to Fury?
Just finish off all these F games.
Yeah, let's just power through the letter F. Just finish this one out. So yeah, Fury. I've not played this one.
Hey, you guys like techno?
I like techno. Well,
hey,
I like
you guys
Fury's
like
techno.
bumping beats?
You guys like the technos?
So I know I played Fury. I don't know who else here played Fury.
I
played it.
Okay. I think that game has a really, really awesome soundtrack. Every stage is a boss fight and has its own unique sound music to it. And most of them, I would say, are really, really good. There are definitely a couple of standouts. I don't know the titles off the top of my head, but I just think that game has the sort of that, like, I mean, you call it techno, and that's mostly what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm half joking, but
it has, the energy behind it that propels those fights in a way that I think does help the game a lot, and they're also just really good tracks to listen to. I think some of them get real, like, weird and strange in a way that I like, especially the walking sequences. Like, some of those are combined with the visuals of walking through, I thought were really cool. But yeah, I think that game has a great soundtrack all the way through. I don't know if other people are on board with me on that, but that would be one of my top 3.
I don't necessarily agree with
personally
the walking sequence parts, but I think a lot of the boss themes are really cool.
Yeah, I personally remember liking that game atmospherically a lot, kind of whole package. I don't remember the music in particular standing out for me, and I switched the voice acting to Japanese, which was pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
But I do remember that
Go ahead,
that game being atmospheric, like, and part of that has to have been the music. I probably just tuned it out, so I don't know that I would get behind it being a top 3 best sounding game, but I'm not completely opposed to it. I just don't distinctly remember that one strongly.
Some of my favorite songs from the year are from this game. I think the soundtrack is like a little more up and down. Like, I actually don't like anything about the walking parts, music included.
Right.
But I think some of the best boss themes I think are really, really cool. I think my favorite one is called like "Make This Right" or something. I don't remember
That's
which
the one I was trying to remember.
Yeah, but I like that soundtrack when it gets weirder. Like, for most of the time when I think it's less impressive, it's kind of your standard like aggressive like electronic beats that like could fit in any other game. Like, it's good, but it's just kind of standard. If we knock stuff like Abzu or whatever for being standard, like, I think this falls into that same boat, just a different style of music. But I think it has some really good standout tracks that like make it work really well. Like, this is a borderline one for me. Like, for my personal top 3. Like, I think the good songs this one has are really good.
Yeah, I think it probably does have some of my favorite songs that I noticed from the year. This is one of the few games that, as I was playing it, I noticed like specific tracks that I really liked. So they're definitely, the highlights stand out really strongly. I think to your point, I think that some of them maybe are a little more standard electronic.
Yeah.
And that could be not your thing or your thing. I don't necessarily think of that as my favorite type of music either. So
yeah, like half of them.
I'm willing to take that criticism.
Yeah, like they're not bad, but it's like, oh, this could go in anything that takes this kind of music. Like, it doesn't really it doesn't really stand out or speak to this game specifically. Like, it's not bad by any stretch. Like, it's still good, but it's
right.
like, you know, when we're talking about standouts, like it loses a little steam there. I also think
Right.
the voice work's kind of bad.
Yeah, I was about to actually say that I don't think much other than the music particularly sounds good.
Yeah.
If we wanted to include all of those parts.
Yeah.
I will say, I mean, and I guess maybe this is a bit telling, but switching the language was I don't know. I didn't listen to the game in English voice acting, although I've heard some complaints about that. But
Yeah.
I thought it was, you know, maybe just because I couldn't understand what they were saying, I thought it was a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the Japanese
If I didn't know
dialogue.
what they were saying, that probably would make it more enjoyable because a lot of it's really stupid.
That's
not-
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like with everything I've heard, I mean, you guys have just about talked this thing out of the top 3.
Yeah,
I mean-
it's weird because like if this category was just best music, it'd be a top 3 for sure.
Yeah.
But when we expand it to sound, I think not only does it drop a little, but I think some of these others rise a little as well. So like I think that simultaneously like puts it a little more on the edge.
I would be in favor of bumping this one down as well. You know, we still haven't thrown out Abzu. We can keep that in the same category, but I feel like other contenders are going to be are going to fight a little harder for those top 3 spots.
Okay.
All right. So that's Fury. How about Hyperlight Drifter? That game is really hilarious.
That game sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah. That's definitely a game where all of the sounds are really good.
Yeah. That's
I remember, similar to Fury, I remember that game kind of enjoying its atmosphere,
Mhm.
and you know, I'm sure the sound was a big part of it. If you go and listen to some of the sounds independently, I feel like it tends to be a little dull because it is a very like Hyper Light Drifter in general is a very like slightly depressing, like mysterious environment, and I guess the music accurately reflects that.
yeah.
It does definitely add into the whole package, but I don't know that I enjoy it as much independent of the game.
Yeah, that's a really good, like, this is definitely a soundtrack that, like, outside of the context of the game, it doesn't necessarily hold up, but I think it also fits the game perfectly. Like, Hyper Light Drifter is one of my favorite games this year for atmosphere, and, like, the music contributes to that in a big way. Like, it's a lot of, like, old school sound effects and, like, ambient bleeps and bloops in a way, and like I think it really works to give that game its style. And I think even like the combat noises and the monster noises, like I think all of that works really effectively. I think this is one of the best examples of game that like really like affects the feeling of playing the game. Like, you know, you could take Fury's music or something outside the game and it sounds good, but like this one like really adds to like that place you're in when you're playing the game. Like I think it's really effective in all the ways it sounds.
Okay. So I don't know, like that's still sounding like you know, the fact that you can't really pull it away. Like the music makes the game makes the music, so that's a little bit tougher to.
I don't think that's a detriment at all. Like we're talking about, I mean, at least for me, I feel like if a game enhances, if the game's music enhances the game's experience, I think that is really impressive. And whether you can separate the music from the game or not, I don't think that matters to that experience. Like I don't think, you know, like if Fury's music is okay to listen to outside of the game and is also okay to listen to inside the game, like in some ways that almost says like that music is not really connected to the game in a meaningful way. Like Hyper Light Drifter's music and sound effects, like they fit in that game so well that outside of the game it doesn't make sense. Like it's so tailored to that experience and makes that experience better. I think that's impressive and worth rewarding.
Okay.
I mean, I don't completely disagree with that point, but you know, if you think about like a lot of classic soundtracks, like let's say the old Final Fantasy games, right? The fact that you can listen to those outside the game and still enjoy it is definitely a positive. And they still definitely memorably fit the context of the game, even some of the more down themes. But I guess that point aside, like for me personally, like I thought Hyper Light Drifter had good sound for what it did. I probably wouldn't put it as a personal favorite. I would bump it down a little bit myself, but it is definitely a good experience. Like it helps create the ambiance of that world.
It's one of those things that, like, as you're playing,
whatever that ambiance is, it's so mysterious to the point of being cryptic.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, as you're playing, everything just sounds right. Like it all sounds good and like it fits and has its place and beefs up the experience. I'd be curious what Nate's stance is on it, because he also played it. I think that's going to factor in here as well when he gets back. But I would definitely. This is one of the stronger ones for me personally.
Well, I mean, so would you put Hyper Light Drifter ahead of Firewatch?
They are close. I'm gonna go ahead and remove Abzu because we've talked about enough of these other ones that it's not gonna make it. Firewatch and Hyper Light Drifter are close. I am actually curious where Nate stands on those two, because if he likes Firewatch better, I might be willing to concede Hyper Light to Firewatch. At the same time, I could see both of them being in our top three.
Nah, that's impossible. Because
it's very possible, Paul.
I don't think so.
I mean, I'm not gonna die on the hill or anything, but I like what I'm seeing in some of these other games, including Firewatch. I mean, I went back and listened to some samples of each of these games, and I thought what Firewatch was doing was a little more impressive than Hyper Light Drifter, which was a game I played.
Okay. Well, we'll see what Nate says, and we may end up removing if he doesn't feel strong about it. I think Hyper Light Drifter's really darn impressive.
Yeah, I think it's a great ambience. It does a great job at creating ambience, but
Nate,
I guess my point is sort of that's all it does.
Nate, they're trying to take away Hyper Light Drifter.
He already took away Fury. Don't do this to me.
No, you're the one that took away Fury. You made a really good argument for it not to be there anymore.
I don't see Rocket League on. Oh wait, that was last year. Okay.
I mean, yeah. So I would have.
Wait. We need to. This needs to be like the Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time Memorial Award for best sounding game.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I had to step away for a second. I'm sorry, but it looks like we took off Abzu.
Yeah, we've had enough strong arguments for these other games. I don't think Abzu's going to hang. We've been talking about Hyper Light Drifter.
So
I want to keep it. They want to cut it.
Yeah, I haven't played all of these, to be fair. But I think Firewatch is a sure lock for me. I think Fury and Hyper Light Drifter are both really, really strong. Obviously, I can't just say what the top three are, though. And yeah, Doom's real good too. But
yeah. So if you feel do you feel stronger? You feel a lot stronger about Firewatch than Hyper Light, right?
I do.
Okay. They were trying to cut one or the other, and I said, why can't both be on?
Yeah, well, I would say both be on there for sure.
I mean, I wasn't trying to make it an either or. I'm just saying I played Hyper Light Drifter. I listened to I listened to some of the clips from Firewatch, and between the two, I liked Firewatch better. And this, I played Hyper Light Drifter, just for reference. So I like the soundtrack from a game I didn't play more than from a game I did play.
Right.
That's my point. And it sounds like both of you also seem to feel a little more strongly about Firewatch.
I probably do lean slightly towards Firewatch just because its dialogue is so effective.
Yeah.
And Nate, I guess the point I was making, why I would push Hyper Light Drifter down a bit, which since there are only 3 slots, this probably pushes it off the list, is just that I remember that game having it had a really great sound and kind of building the ambiance of that world, but that's kind of all it does. Like, it's not very interesting to listen to outside of the game. It's just like a very ambient soundtrack.
Yeah, you're right that it's probably not great for listening to outside of the game, but like some of the effects that the music or sound does have in that game are pretty great. Like, I think that opening cinematic has really cool music that goes really well with the visual style. And I think, like, I remember one specific spot when you're heading north in the game, if we can try to like think back in our brains. You're climbing like a snowy mountain, and you kind of like come up to the top of a hill, and there's one of those big, like, I don't even know, are they mechanical or whatever, like big creatures that are kind of like strewn around the world. There's one of those like hanging off of a mountain, kind of, or like a body part hanging off of a mountain. And the music just goes like boom, and then like picks up.
Yeah.
And, like, has this really cool like track that starts up right there, and it's like a really cool moment that you just see when you're just exploring the world. Like, there's no, it's not a cutscene or anything. I don't know. I think that game sounds great. I even think like the combat sounds in that game sound really good.
That's the other thing for me, is I think like just the general sound effects are great.
And like even just simple things like picking up a health pack, like all of the little sound effects are just good.
There's a lot of sound cues that really fit into like the flow of the gameplay that like just make the whole experience kind of meld into one thing. Like the look, the feel, the sound, like all of that stuff just kind of melds together in a way that's like, really effective.
Part of what makes that combat feel so satisfying is the sound feedback you get from hitting enemies. I think there's a lot of really good sound work in that game. You know, if you want to say the one knock against it is that it doesn't really have music that you would listen to outside, I'll concede that point, but I don't think that necessarily takes away from it on this list.
Yeah, that was the counter argument I made, is like I don't know, like, if it's effective in the game, I don't know that it matters whether it works out of the game or not.
Right.
No, I mean, that's not my only point. That's probably my biggest point. The other is that it's just not my favorite. Like,
sure.
I think whole package, it's a great game, and it's probably one of my top 10, but just like sound-wise, like, yeah, it's good. It's atmospheric. Like, I like the sound effects, but I think the other games on this list probably do things that are a little more memorable for me.
Speaking of memorable. Sorry, go ahead, Fowler.
I was going to say I would be willing to cross it off. It is one of the 3 I nominated. But I think I'd be willing to trade it for Firewatch, because I feel like we have more affinity for that.
With this list, the way it stands now, without having heard the arguments for some of these other games, I am not willing to cross it off.
Okay, we are keeping it then, because that was a painful cross off for me. So I'll go. I
think somebody needs to sell me on Owlboy and Tokyo Mirage Sessions before I can cross that off.
I think Final Fantasy 15 is the weakest one we have left, and I think
or
that
yeah. I haven't been sold on that yet either. But I didn't play any of those, so
here are the tears and blood and.
I have played all these games with Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE. I've listened to some of that, and I would take that over Final Fantasy 15. And all of these games I've played, I like way better audio from an audio standpoint than Final Fantasy 15. I do not think Final Fantasy. Now that we've talked out enough of these, I don't think Final Fantasy 15 hangs at all.
Man, I have never heard you have such a strong opinion that is so wrong. I'm just
Paul,
kidding.
how many of these games have you played, Paul?
Well, yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from.
And I don't necessarily want to make it that
yeah,
argument.
Let's talk through the other games, because I do feel like
let's do that.
Final Fantasy 15 is still a pretty good contender on this list for me personally. But let's go through the other games and see if anything else falls off, and then whittle it down.
All right, well, let's just go ahead and shoot up to Doom. I mean, that's one that I think that we're all kind of avoiding talking about because we all like it a lot.
Yeah.
Like, there's probably not going to be a whole lot to say here other than Doom has incredible music. Its dialogue is hilarious, mostly from all the punching, and the sound effects are just gratifying as gratifying can be. I mean, I don't really have a whole lot of negative things to say about it, so it's probably one of the least interesting games to talk about on this list, at least for me.
I don't know.
I mean, I would just say that for my money, Doom is definitely in my top three. I think that it did a lot of really cool things, especially with the sound effects. I mean, just the chainsaw is just gratifying, you know.
Yeah, it is.
So but it's a lot of things like that, you know, like the real thump of the shotgun is gratifying.
Yeah.
Like even when you throw a grenade and it explodes, like they do a lot of things with the actual sound and also with the, like the sort of like oral sound, like of like when enemies are somewhere around and you can like hear them off in the distance. They did a really good job with that too. So I think Doom is a strong contender to be somewhere in our top three.
I think Doom's a strong contender to be somewhere in our top one.
I'm fine with that too. I mean, I really think it's great.
I think of all these games, Doom is like the total package. Like I think its score is incredible and fits that game to a T. I think its voice acting is amazingly effective at conveying that game's like better than it should be narrative. And I think the sound effects, as Paul was describing, are best of like. I don't know that any game's ever had like sound effects that good. Like like all of the weapon effects, like all the demon effects, like the sounds it makes when you're tearing things in half with your bare hands, like everything just sounds on point. Like it's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, Dead Space is the only other game that I really feel like has done that thing where you hear enemies in the vents.
Right.
Like Doom does that to me just as well. So yeah.
Yeah, like it's bringing it from every angle, top notch. Like it just does it all well. And like I'm not even someone who's a fan of like heavy metal, but like that game's soundtrack fits Doom to a T. Like that game's soundtrack is Doom. Like it's hard to imagine that soundtrack being in any other game, and it's hard to imagine that game having any other soundtrack. Like they go hand in hand so perfectly. Like it just fits, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like that game is metal as shit, and so is that soundtrack, and it works.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I particularly enjoy the music of Doom, but I agree that it is very fitting for that game.
Like I've like pulled up that soundtrack and listened to it a few times during the year, and every single time it makes me crack up because it is so perfectly ridiculous. Like it makes that game sound amazing in all of the right ways that fits its like dumb campy tones so well. It's amazing.
Ryan,
Yep.
are you not a fan of the Doom music?
Well, I mean, so I haven't played the game, and like, just listening to the music from an outsider's point of view, it's like, yeah, that sounds like what you would find in a Doom game.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, it's going to be hard for me to comment too much because, you're talking about the sound effects also makes it sound like it's more of a whole package thing. If it's purely the music, like, as somebody who hasn't played the game, like, I don't care much for that style of music, and I don't really, Doom is like a setting or an atmosphere or whatever you want to call it. Doesn't seem like it would be my cup of tea. So like I'm not really going to be on board with any of the sound effects, but maybe if you're in the game and think it's funny or whatever, like
I think I think that I don't really love the music either. I think it's high quality music of that style, and it fits the game really well. The thing that it does when you're playing the game is that when stuff goes down and demons are coming, you know it because the drums go and then the guitar comes in and
the guitar starts wailing
and you're ready to start punching things, and that's the effect that the music itself has. I would say I think that the sound effects are probably stronger than the music for me for Doom.
I would agree with that.
And Samuel Hayden's voice is really
good. Hayden's voice is the best. Man.
Yeah. I mean, and I really do think that even beyond the music, I really think that the sound design by itself, it is just about enough, even without the other pieces, to really bring this into the conversation, because they really did an excellent job. Just with all those, I mean, even like opening doors and things, it's like you feel like a badass doing everything. I mean, you punch elevators to make them go up and down,
Yeah, it's like when this was best music, it was in my top 3, but I don't know if it was top 1. But like when you bring in the sound effects, like its sound design across the board is incredible. And I, like you guys were saying, like I'm not a fan of heavy metal music either.
Right.
But I think it's a really strong thing when a game makes its soundtrack match what's going on screen, both visually and gameplay wise. Like I think that is worth rewarding, even if it's not your kind of music. And I think Doom does that with its soundtrack as well as any game. Like that soundtrack is Doom.
So I mean, for me, it's gonna be. I'm not gonna sit here and argue against it. Like part of it's gonna be like, you guys are gonna have to figure out which of your games are gonna get cut. But I'll make the argument for the other games which I like, and we'll see where things fall.
Doom is the one game I will be a stick in the mud is going to be on this list, and I think it should be.
If all four of us have one hill we're ready to die on, and none of those are the same hill, this is going to get real bad.
I don't have any hills, although there are 2 games which I will be disappointed to see both of them get cut. So let's see how it goes.
So Owlboy.
Owlboy.
Let's just get that out of here. No one cares.
If this was just music, this would be like this and Doom were the 2 I was going to be a stick in the mud about. When we open it up to sounds, it does fare a little less well, but its soundtrack is like, I think it's like, we're talking about like variety and just like general like spunk in a soundtrack. Like Owlboy is great. I don't know if you guys had a chance to listen to any of that music, but like it has like a joy and a whimsy to its soundtrack that like you don't get. That's not done well often enough in games. Like it just has a very like gleeful tone to it. That's just I think it's a really fun soundtrack.
It seems very free and fun.
Yeah, and like that game's story like hits some emotional points that soundtrack buoys that perfectly. Like when you're adventuring, like it's got good adventuring songs. When like something happy happens, it's got that. It's got like more menacing tracks when things go south, and it has like happy songs when things are good. Like it goes to different places really effectively, and like you said, it feels free in a way. Like it's a really loose soundtrack that follows your emotions at every turn. Like it's not trying to be restrictive in one style. Like it's really kind of going with the player in a lot of ways. I think it's really effective.
Right. So if you're the only person who played it, like I agree, the music I listen to is good.
Yeah.
Hearing the other arguments for the games on this list, would you push for it to be in the top 3? Because you're going to have to be the one to do the lifting on that.
It's one of the 3 I nominated.
Okay.
It would be one of my 3. I mean, we're all going to have to lose some here. So if I have to lose one of mine, I could see that one go. I wouldn't be happy about it, but may just be how it goes. I mean, for pure soundtrack, I like it better than most of these. I think when you look at stuff like Firewatch that also has great dialogue, I think in that situation, like I could see it going and be okay with it. But I will say it's easily one of my top 2 soundtracks of the year, like for just pure music, because I think some of those songs are just great. It does whimsy better than most games do.
Is the music better than Fury?
I like its music better than Fury's.
Okay, fair enough.
If I was doing top 3 soundtracks, it would be Doom, Fury, and Owlboy. Okay. If we're doing sound, then I might trade some things. But like I think Fury drops down to sound. For the sake of moving this along, because I'm probably not going to get much support, I will go ahead and cross off Owlboy. But for the record, I think it has one of the best soundtracks of the year. I don't think its sound effects are great, so I can be okay letting it go on those merits. And because we have some good arguments for more well-rounded games on here.
Yeah.
But if this category was still best music, I would be singing a very different tune about Owlboy right now. It would be staying.
I feel like we're approaching a place where the 3 winners of this category are going to be the things that do more than one thing really well.
Yeah.
Right. So, which brings us to the last game that we haven't talked about yet, Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE. I've not played this one, so who nominated this?
I think that's only Ryan.
That's one that I played, which
You sound so depressed. You're like,
Now we're gonna put you on the defensive here.
I'm not gonna win this one.
yeah, well, no, I mean,
I just tried to defend Owlboy by myself.
I'm totally happy to like, even if it doesn't stay on, like I'm totally happy to give this game its props because this is a game I feel like does a pretty good whole package experience. Like, it has a kind of a bright, chipper, anime-ish atmosphere, like in this setting that's very much tied in with like J-pop and the Japanese entertainment industry. So it uses a lot of J-pop style music like pretty effectively, in addition to having some kind of upbeat RPG like soundtrack in the background. It's got good voice acting, like it's all in Japanese, like they don't have an American localized voice version, but I remember, most of the characters were pretty entertaining and they had a good variety of voices there, like, and the game has tons of humor, like, which I think, the characters voice acting that, like them reading the dialogue, even though I couldn't always understand what they were saying, in listening, like when you read the text, and you kind of see how they're acting it out. Like I found myself laughing along with that game quite a bit. The other thing is that the game, because the setting is, you're basically using like your entertainment power to defeat like these shadowy invaders, like these mirages. They intermix it a lot in the combat system. So like while you're in combat, like, your character might spin up like a special attack and like they'll throw in a little snippet of like one of the game's like J-pop songs, like as part of like a mini cutscene in the combat system. And we talked about, I think this is the same team that did some of the Persona games, and we were talking about how great the music is.
I don't think it's the same team. It has some shared blood,
or
I think, but
the same company, maybe Altus.
yeah, I mean Atlas published it, but they have a ton of different teams.
Yeah, of course. So I mean, maybe there's a tie in there. Like, it's kind of neat though, because I think the game, in addition to like some smaller snippets, has like probably a half a dozen or more like full like songs. And I'm not a huge J-pop fan, but some of them were kind of catchy and they kind of span a gamut from like more electronic themes to like ballads to like more like well-rounded pop and punk. Like, so it's kind of neat. Like the game, I feel like has, music and entertainment as part of the game's setting, and it, it has good voice acting, and it kind of fits it all together pretty well. As far as like, I mean, I haven't played some of these other games. If it was me, I would be putting it as a top 3 contender, since nobody else has played it, and I don't know if there's any support behind it. We could cross it off. Like, I'll just give it its props, and we can move on to some other stuff. But
the J-pop I listened to sounded entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's really catchy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it like struck me as like standout J-pop, but like.
No, I mean, I wouldn't say that, which I don't know. I don't know what standout J-pop is because it's not a genre I listen to outside of video games. But it's it's catchy, and like because the game's kind of built around the whole setting of that industry, like it's effective.
So, I mean, to me, it sounds like that for our discussion, the one game I feel like that we've had the least amount of back and forth about, that more than one of us has played, has been Doom. So I just kind of want to start there for like 2 seconds. Are we all in agreement that Doom is somewhere in the top 3?
Hell yeah.
No comment.
Okay.
What do you guys want to give up for Doom?
I was just
Final
watching
Fantasy 15.
Yeah.
Wait, was that a game you nominated?
Nope.
Okay, so not a sacrifice.
My 3 nominations included Owlboy, so I've already given one up.
Yeah.
What were you saying, Nate?
So I was just watching a video of gameplay of Tokyo Mirage Sessions. I think that's pretty cool. I have to say, just watching a little bit of that, like integrating the stuff into the battle, like I don't even know. There's all kinds of Japanese stuff going on screen when I'm watching, but it looked like they were doing normal attacks, and then like these two performers came out of nowhere, almost in like a Final Fantasy summon style thing, and like they were singing, and as they were like hitting major beats of the song, they were like leaping up and like doing special attacks, and it was pretty cool. So I can see why that's on this list for sure.
Yeah. Like I said, I haven't played that game, and I have played 10 hours of Final Fantasy 15. But for your big Japanese soundtrack, I would pick Tokyo Mirage Sessions over.
Yeah, just watching this 2-minute gameplay and listening to some of the music before we got on here, I would say that seems to have a lot more personality in the music than what I've seen of Final Fantasy 15. But I have not played either of them, so
that's really my big thing with 15 is I think it's just very standard, like JRPG score. Like I just don't think it stands out. I think Tokyo Mirage Session has some spunk to it that's more entertaining.
Seems neat. So
here's my perspective. I think like in like a from like an hitting all points kind of sound category, like I for my money, Doom and Firewatch are the two that are kind of like hitting everything well. Like all of the sound from all angles they do it really well.
Yeah, those seem like two strong picks to me for this group.
Yeah, for me those like after our discussion, like I wasn't initially sold on Firewatch, but now that we've talked it out, like I think it's the most like one of the stronger ones, like in a well-rounded sense. And then the third game we could probably fight out for days, but for my money, I think those two make it.
The only game that I'm going to feel strongly about, because I know I don't have the support for Final Fantasy 15. I want to see Doom up there. I think Doom should probably be number one. But as long as Doom is somewhere in the top 3, I will be happy.
If Doom and Firewatch are in there, I will play hands off on the third. I will say I think Final Fantasy 15 is the weakest one left, but if people feel strongly about it, I won't go to the grave keeping that off. But I will definitely put it out there that I think that's the weakest one we have left. I think any of these other ones are more worthy. But if I get Doom and Firewatch on there, I'm not going to fight to the grave.
Personally, my two favorites and I mean, I'm not going to dispute with the two, Doom and Firewatch. Like, I think Firewatch actually, not having played the game, like it sounded pretty cool.
Yeah.
The two of the remaining list that I like the most were 15 and Tokyo Mirage Sessions, which I actually played both of the other games.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, how do we resolve this?
So Doom, Firewatch, Final Fantasy 15.
I wouldn't be opposed to that.
I mean, I think like Justin, I would probably pick either of the other two over Final Fantasy 15, but I feel like I'm not allowed to say that since I have not played any Final Fantasy 15.
I think Final Fantasy 15 is just boring. Like I don't think its musical score does anything interesting. Like we were saying, stuff like Abzu and Dark Souls and Uncharted are like very good standard soundtracks in those mold, and I think Final Fantasy 15 is in literally that exact same bucket. And I don't think its voice acting is standout either. Like I think it's good, serviceable voice acting. I saw a comment about the southernness of it, and I think like that's goofy and entertaining, but I don't think it's good. I don't think it's necessarily bad either. It's just kind of a weird thing. I think in raw quality, I think Final Fantasy 15 is just very standard sounding. Like I don't think when we're talking about best, I don't think it stands out in any noticeable way. I would take Hyper Light Drifter, Tokyo Mirage, or Fury over Final Fantasy 15 in a heartbeat. Because I think all three of those do something special. I think Fury has some really good standout tracks. I think Hyper Light Drifter, all of its sounds work towards making an incredible atmosphere that's just like really unique and like very holistic for what that game does. And I think Tokyo Mirage Session does like it really embraces like the goofy, eccentric J-pop nature of like what that game's going for in a way that seems pretty rad.
Yeah.
So like I think all three of those do stronger things in Final Fantasy 15 personally. I think Doom and Firewatch for like a comprehensive sound category, I think they're the standouts here and those are the two I'm going to fight for. The third I'm not going to fight for as much, but that's my piece on the rest.
So, all right. So Ryan, would you, given what Flex just said, we're going to do a final tally. Do you think Final Fantasy 15 should be the third one in this bucket, or do you think that the other games stand out more?
I mean, so for me, like it's close for me between Final Fantasy 15 and Tokyo Mirage because, Tokyo Mirage, again, it's a whole package. Like, I do like the atmosphere and setting of Final Fantasy 15. I'm 25 hours in, so give it some more time and that could go up or down a little bit. Like, the game definitely has its weaknesses, but there are a couple of the new songs I like. The voice acting, yeah, sometimes it misses, but like there's so much of it, and it's such an integral part of the game. Like, and it does have high points that really create them, create the atmosphere and setting, which is, it's a setting I get behind, right? You jump in your car, like you throw on, whether it's one of the old soundtracks or the new soundtracks, like that's kind of a neat, like, experience. Like, so. It's close for me between those two games. Like, if people want to bump off Final Fantasy 15, I would like to see Tokyo Mirage Sessions get on there, but that's kind of my take on that last slot.
I do think the car radio in Final Fantasy 15 sounds like a cool thing to have.
That's the single best thing in that game musically. That thing is pretty rad.
I mean, I actually like the voice acting, so
right.
I would dispute. And, of course, the sound is very polished all around. Like, it's a Square Enix AAA game. Like, but that's neither here nor there.
But if you want to get Tokyo Mirage Sessions on there, I think I can probably get behind you on that.
I'd support that.
If you think it really has like the quality throughout the game to support it being on this list, based on what I've seen, it seems good. So
I mean, it's one of my favorite games this year, and
yeah.
The sound has to be a great
sure.
part of that because that's what the game's like whole premise is about, is like the entertainment business.
I mean, I'd be good with that.
I can go down this road.
So it sounds to me like our top three games for sound are Doom, Firewatch, and Tokyo Mirage Sessions.
Final check. Are we all good with that?
Yeah, are we all okay with that? I am.
No objections.
All right. So the winner. I mean, yeah. I still feel like given everything that we've talked about, I still feel like we've made the most arguments for Doom. Either Doom or Firewatch.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna win this one, but I would put in my hat for Firewatch. I think that game does everything that it does really well is tied into like mood and feeling, and I think the sound is what drives all of that. And I guess I just personally like its style a little more than Doom. I think Doom, its music and sound supports everything that game is doing too thematically, but if I had to choose one style that I prefer the style of Firewatch. But that's kind of, I mean, they both do what they do really, really well.
I respect the stylistic like preference, and in a lot of ways I prefer Firewatch's style also. I think Doom on an execution level is just above.
You think it's better than Firewatch in execution?
I don't like metal music, and I enjoyed Doom's sounds more. Like, if it can convert me from something I don't like and make me enjoy it more, like, I think it's doing something special there. I think, and I like, we haven't really talked about sound effects for Firewatch because it just kind of doesn't have much there.
It doesn't have much, no.
Like, it's just kind of footsteps. Like, I think Doom, like, from an audio standpoint, just assaults your ears in every way imaginable, and all of it is amazing. Like, I think it just does it well. I think from an execution standpoint, this is actually a pretty easy comparison.
Okay, so I think with that, it's Doom is our best sounding game of the year. with
Yeah.
runners-up being Firewatch and Tokyo Mirage Session Sharp FE.
Yep.
Congrats, J-Pop.
I can be happy with that list. I don't, we all aren't going to agree with everything on here, but
I will say that's not where I saw that list going, but all right.
I am surprised as well.
I didn't think either Firewatch or Tokyo Mirage Sessions would be here, but I'm happy that they are.
yeah.
All right, that was exhausting, and that was only our first category.
And you said best sound would be easy, Paul.
I thought it would, but then you jerks don't like Final Fantasy music because you're crazy. So,
Paul said
all
that
right.
like someone who hadn't done this before.
So I think it's time for us to take another break. And
I think the next
whenever
one
we,
will be easy though.
The next
It's
one.
looking pretty easy.
yeah, I'm not willing to say that.
Paul's not willing to say anything anymore.
I'm not willing to say anything. We got 5 more categories, and we've been going to this for 3 hours already. So, all right. So I'm gonna say let's take a quick break. Let's come back in a few minutes, and we will roll right into best multiplayer game. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I'm exhausted.
That's sound. All right.
We just wrapped up Best Sound, just to give everyone a quick roundup. Doom won. Doom's probably going to win everything if I have anything to say about it. But our winner for Best Sounding Game was Doom, followed up by Firewatch and Tokyo Mirage Session Sharp FE. Now we're moving into what should be a little bit shorter category, Best Multiplayer Game.
For better, I put this one in the middle today.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and read off the list. It's a bit shorter than the last one. So we're looking at Fortified, Forza Horizon 3, Gears of War 4, Overcooked, Xenoshift, Fru?
Yep.
What is a Fru? Anyway, Overwatch, Titanfall 2, and World of Warcraft Legion. So there's a couple of games that we want to give shout-outs to. We're running a little long on time, so we're going to try and power through some of the ones that we don't necessarily think will be top 3, but just that we did want to say were very good. Ryan, let's start with you on Fortified. What is that, and what made you put it on this list?
Yeah, Fortified. The list this year is a little bit thin, and Fortified is basically sort of like an Orcs Must Die 2-ish game that was not executed as well. But it was kind of fun, like kind of campy, a little unpolished, but I thought it was worth a mention. Definitely not going to be a top 3 game.
Yeah, I mean, we played it together, and it's a solid, it's a solid, tower defense thing. I don't know that it does anything that stands out, but it's not a bad time.
Okay. So is it sort of the similar third-person shooter tower defense, or is it just straight tower defense?
Same style as Orcs Must Die. Not nearly as good.
Okay. All right. So moving right along, Forza Horizon 3. Flex, you tried to show us this when we came to Raleigh to visit you, but your Xbox had to spend 4 hours updating, so we never actually saw it.
It was done when I walked back into my apartment.
All right, so tell us about it.
Yeah, Xbox updates suck, by the way. Forza Horizon 3 is a fantastic driving game, and a lot of its multiplayer stuff is very standard multiplayer stuff.
Sure.
So you can do races, and you can even do free roam stuff in the game's world, which is that world's really cool. So just kind of free roaming around it with other people can be really fun. The main kind of catch it has for multiplayer stuff is it actually pulls in. Drivatars. It pulls in these avatars that drive around your world from, other Xbox Live users. So you kind of see them, even when you're playing single player, you kind of see these AI-controlled cars driving around that have the names of other players, and you can challenge them to duels and do all this kind of stuff. So it has some neat online integrated components in addition to standard races, and it's got leaderboards all over the place too. So it has a lot of good social hooks in there. It doesn't really stand out a whole lot past standard races.
Okay.
So I don't think it rates in a top 3, but if you want to play an online driving game in 2016, like that's the one you want to go for.
So I guess maybe the best way to sum that up is it's a good one of those, but it doesn't necessarily. Okay.
You got it.
All right. Speaking of a good one of those, Gears of War 4, which I've actually heard some really good things about. Flex,
Yeah.
you and Nate played this?
Yeah, we played through the campaign together and tried out some Horde, and I think it's a very good Gears of War game.
Okay.
Like those games have kind of traded on, like, we didn't really play much of the competitive multiplayer, but like the Gears games have kind of traded on co-op since its inception, really. And like I think this game does that very well. Like I don't know if you agree, Nate, but like I think the campaign was fun to play through, and I think there's some cool stuff in the Horde mode.
Yeah, those games and all their mechanics and sort of the pacing of them work very well for a co-op game. I think Horde mode is still cool, although maybe there are a couple of hang-ups with Horde mode in this one. It's just how grindy it is, I guess. But
Yeah.
I do think that the campaign is still strong, still makes a really good, fun co-op experience, and the Horde mode is definitely there with a lot to do in it if you're so inclined.
Yeah, that Horde mode is one of those things that, like, if I had a ton of free time and like we had a group of 5, like I think that would be a really fun time sink to go into. But it does require a lot of time. Like I think the new classes are really neat, but it does require kind of a grind to get them up. So like if you really want to get the most out of that Horde mode, like it's gonna be a bit of a time commitment, which is my one bummer for it. Like if it didn't have that grind with the Horde mode, I think it would be a stronger candidate here. But as it stands, I think we're going to end up with 3 other games that are just kind of more all-round strong for multiplayer.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to hang here.
But it is very good. Like if you're someone who's liked Gears before, like this is another good one of those.
Yeah, and you know, not to repeat myself, but I feel like everything I read about Gears 4 was kind of the same thing with Forza Horizon 3. It's a really good one of those, you know, I'm actually kind of glad that it wasn't bad, because I did enjoy the Gears series, and then when I heard that Gears of War 4 was coming out, I was like, oh God, they're going to try and cash in on an already completed story. This is going to be awful. But, you know, it sounds like it's, you know, it's not bad. You know?
I was actually kind of expecting this game to fall flat in a lot of ways. And, like, you know, it's not a revolution by any stretch. But, like, I think it ended up being a little better than I expected it to be.
It only falls flat at the end.
Well, yeah, that ending there. We should make a category for worst ending.
Yeah. There's a couple contenders this year.
Yeah, there are.
Oh, that's funny. So moving right along, Overcooked. So Ryan, Flex, you guys played this?
Yeah, Nate played some too.
Okay.
I played it with Flex and with my brother. Overcooked is it's a fun local co-op game. Maybe sort of in the way that Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time was. It kind of used Overcooked, aside from the fact that it has a hilarious intro, it uses some interesting mechanics to kind of, to force you or encourage you to work with your co-op partner. I think it might support up to 4 players, but
I think it does.
I only played it 2-player. But basically, you have a game setting where you're trying to deliver as many food orders as possible, and each level might have a different type of food, and basically, you have to prepare them different ways. So, like, let's say I'm on the level with tomato soup, so I have to pull 3 tomatoes out, cut them, put them in a pot, let the pot finish, put it on a plate, and deliver it. And then after a few seconds, like a dirty plate will come back. Well, so you and your partner are kind of working to, like one person might be, to be most efficient, one person might be bringing the tomatoes in, and then one person might be cutting them. And then the first player might go and load the pot, and then the second player might go put the pot on the plate and deliver it, and then somebody eventually has to pull away and wash the dishes. So it ends up being this like kind of hectic, cooperative multiplayer experience that's pretty interesting, kind of unique. Not a very long game or varied game, or else maybe it would get more props. But so I don't think it's going to be a top 3 contender. But it's kind of unique and kind of something fun for 2016.
Yeah, I really like the just hectic, frantic nature of it all. Like that's like I haven't played through the entire game, but like every time I played it, it's been really fun just because like it's just pure mayhem in a really good way. Like it incites that really effectively.
Yeah, and I've watched a couple of Let's Plays, and I believe the Giant Bomb guys have also played it a few times on their various streams. And hectic is definitely the word that I would describe. Just, I mean, even watching it stresses me out just a little bit.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, and this is probably the first game, and I haven't played it, so you guys correct me if I'm wrong. This is the first game that I think, that we kind of really talked about, where it's like, it's not bad, but we think that it's sort of one of those games that it doesn't do enough to really get it into the top 3, but it doesn't necessarily have any fatal flaws. You know what I mean?
This is a really fun multiplayer game. I think just with what we have this year, it happens to be number 4, but like it's really fun.
Yeah, and spoilers. The next game's probably not going to make it. But Ryan, try and sell us on Xenoshift. Is it a JRPG in the Xenoblade Chronicles kind of thing? I'm gonna guess no.
Not at all.
Absolutely not. Yeah, I have no idea where that came from, but
Xeno, it's all the same, right?
So Xenoshift is actually originally a board game that came out of Kickstarter, and it's kind of this cool 1 to 4 player deck building kind of base defense game. You have the sort of deck building elements, sort of like Dominion, but then your goal is to defend a base, you and your teammates, and you each choose a military division which has different powers, so you have different strengths, and you buy soldiers and items and equipment. It was originally a board game. But it was adapted into a multiplayer video game. So the video game is a board game adaptation.
Yeah.
Really fun. It's kind of an unpolished implementation, or it could even at a higher ranking. But it's fun to play. It's kind of like playing a board game with friends in some ways.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
it is a really well-balanced, well-tuned game. It's just the video game adaptation and the multiplayer online elements aren't always that amazing.
Yeah, the technical aspect of it is real rough, and it's also a co-op board game. So and I think co-op stuff actually probably works better in a video game setting, because most co-op board games end up having a lot of stat tracking to keep up with. That can be really tedious. So I think that does kind of help it a little bit. Man, yeah, the little bit I tried to play of it, the technical stuff was really rough.
Yeah, if it was a polished technical implementation, I could see this game even being something that we enjoyed more, which I played a fair amount of it, 3-player, 2-player, and enjoyed it, but I wouldn't put it in the top 3 compared to some of the other stuff.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, just from what you described, I think I'm more interested in the board game than I am in the video game, which just means that they probably need to do a little work on the technical side of things, like Flex was saying. But that does sound neat. I mean, and I don't know if this is actually going to happen, but maybe they'll release a patch, or maybe something along the lines to sort of make that technical implementation a little bit better, because that certainly sounds interesting, but at the same time, it's guys, come on. It's just programming. How hard can it be, right? It's just game development.
Worrying that you're not gonna be able to finish the game because it's gonna crash is pretty bad.
Yeah, and I think that's that's really, really bad when you're, especially this sounds like it's a game that you don't finish in 10 minutes, right? This is a longer. Yeah, so that's.
I mean, you could lose it in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh no.
You're probably not going to win it in 10 minutes.
It can be quite difficult.
So those are our games that we liked, but we don't necessarily think are superb contenders for our top 3 of the year. But now we move into the bolded games, which means these are all serious. Flex, Nate, you guys put down Fru.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, you did. Actually, Nate, let's start with you. What do you like most about Fru?
Fru is a Connect game.
Best Connect game ever made.
What's that
It
mean?
actually works. And it is kind of awesome.
Connect, like Xbox Connect?
Xbox Connect, yeah. So,
Really?
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about like Connect 4.
No. It uses the Xbox One Connect sensor, which is a product that has had, some troubles, we'll say.
Let's say it's had a troubled life.
That's a nice way to say that.
There's never really been a Connect game that was worth much.
Yeah.
I don't know.
At least not very many options.
Was it Just Dance, or what was the dance?
Yeah.
Dance Central.
Dance Central.
Yeah,
That game was pretty fun.
Yeah.
That's not real.
But I mean,
So-
At least as a
It's-
party game.
2016
Fru is-
now, and there's this Connect co-op multiplayer game coming out.
Yeah. It's totally bizarre that this game exists, but I kind of love it.
Yeah.
It's
But
very
even better,
simple.
it's a good multiplayer game.
Yeah, it is actually a good multiplayer game, but it's very simple. It's a 2D side-scrolling platformer where you control the character that can just run and jump. I think that's literally the only actions you have.
I think so.
Really?
And
So that's what one player is doing.
yeah, that's what one player is doing with a controller. And then the other player stands in front of the Kinect, and it shows your silhouette on the screen of your body. And depending on what part of the level you're overlapping, different things can happen. So you can the main thing they do is either to reveal or hide parts of the environment by your body's silhouette.
Right.
So you're actually changing the layout of the level by positioning your body in different ways. So you can hold out a hand over where a bridge might be and make the bridge appear for the player to run across.
Yeah. And
There are a couple other mechanics they do, but that's sort of the core of that game.
Yeah, and they get really clever with it because like they end up making you contort in all sorts of funky ways because like it'll start out simple. It's like, oh, hold your hand here to make this platform appear, and they'll run across it. But then as it layers on, you're like trying to make certain platforms appear while not making other ones disappear. So you're like trying to hit certain spots while avoiding other spots, and it like really gets into this weird.
Mm-hmm. And then there are moving pieces that you have to follow with your body, and yeah.
Yeah, it's really simple core ideas, but they build out on it in really smart and effective ways. And like the Connect side of it all just works.
It does work. And it's not a super long game, but I think it's a really cool thing that exists and that it works and that it's fun, and that's why it is in contention for this.
Yeah.
Okay, and that definitely sounds interesting, just from the fact that there's been a lot of time that the Kinect has been out, and this is probably one of the first games that I'm hearing about, other than Dance Central of all things. That's like in contention for being really serious and really fun.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I had like it's not complicated and it's not long, but I had a lot of fun the entire time we were playing it.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next game sort of like, I sort of hesitate to be, really given into hyperbole when it comes to some of this stuff, because I think there's too much hyperbole in the world today in general. But Overwatch pretty much took the internet by storm.
Yeah, it did.
This game came out, and when it did, pretty much, like I'm active on Reddit, I'm active on Twitter, it's like anywhere I turned, it's like, hey, here's another thing about Overwatch. So, like this is basically, at least from what I've been seeing, the new Team Fortress 2, is maybe one way to say that. Another way to say that is that it's engaged people that really don't even necessarily play a lot of multiplayer first-person shooters. So, Overwatch is real good, and it's made a real big impact this year.
Yeah. Some of how well it's been received kind of confuses me a little bit because it's, games like this have existed before, and it's also like a really light package that came at full or near full price. Like it's basically just one game mode, and other games like Titanfall 1 and Evolve and those kind of things, they kind of died because people gave them crap for coming out at full price with one game mode. But you know regardless, like Overwatch has thrived in spite of that and has really like captured a lot of people, and it is a lot of fun to play. Like I'm not normally one for team-based or I don't know what you'd call it, like the Team Fortress style shooter, but
I mean, it's almost like a MOBA shooter in terms of like class-based
class-based,
shooters.
there you go. But when Blizzard brings it, they bring it.
Yeah, they do.
And to be fair,
well.
the PC version, they had a $40 version, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Minus a few cosmetic items. So full price is a slightly misleading, but you're right.
Yeah, but it's still like
the console versions are
content-wise,
$60,
it feels on par
yeah.
with a MOBA, and those are free. So even 40 is a lot more than that. But
I totally am on board with what you're saying.
That's kind of
like,
besides the point. But it is a very fun game. Like they pulled it off.
Yeah,
right.
I think the level of polish and quality on that thing is tremendous. Like all the characters in Overwatch are really, really well realized. All have their own uses in terms of the gameplay, team mechanics, and I think the map variety they have, it works for that game. I don't think you need a lot of very confusing maps for that game to work. So I think that is what I would need for that game. What they had. Other than
a ton of personality in that game too.
Yeah, personality.
I
absolutely.
think that's actually what's grabbed a lot of people. Is like
that's
those
definitely
characters are really fun.
Yeah, the characters are really, really strong personalities and really like just goofy fun.
Give yourself to the rhythm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to harp on this too much because this we're looking at gameplay, right? But I think that there's something that should be considered, that anytime Blizzard has posted sort of like a fictional backstory for any of these characters, it's picked up in a way that is just, it's almost odd,
It is.
Like, very, very recently, they sort of released a backstory, at least recently as of this recording, they released a backstory, that Tracer, who's one of the characters in Overwatch, is a lesbian. And, whatever, you can have whatever backstory for whatever character you want, but, the way that sort of took over, at least in my little corner of the internet, the whole thing, it's odd for that to happen with a first-person class-based shooter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and it's
also
also
I think
funny because like none of it's in the game itself. So like,
right.
If you're just playing the game, which we're talking about the games, not the online webcomics, like
right.
The game itself doesn't convey a lot of this stuff, and then Blizzard puts all this supplemental material, and people go nuts, which is pretty funny. Like, I mean, that supplemental material is good, but it's just like a weird way to do it.
Right. So and none of this is like, any sort of like commentary on what Blizzard is doing. It's just there's a whole lot of other fictional characters out there in the world. Why is everyone so concerned about Overwatch?
Blizzard seems to have a command of like the social gaming conscience that like I don't know how they got it, but they somehow got it, and like it's just theirs.
Definitely.
Yeah. Which is just I just bring that point up to say that it's interesting and it's odd because I can't think of another gaming franchise off the top of my head that like I just open up my web browser and then the internet's yelling at me everything that the latest Overwatch character's done somewhere in like the lore, So anyway, that's probably neither here nor there for our.
I mean, regardless of all that, like Overwatch is a very fun multiplayer game. Like I like a lot of like I have my favorite characters. Like I'm able to get in it and like find roles I like, and I think that's one thing that appeals to people is like there are a bunch of different roles you can play, and it kind of rewards you for playing those different roles. Like I can get in as Lucio and just roll around on my roller skates and heal people and pump up the jams, and like it's a good time. I don't have to be like sniper headshot extraordinaire to have fun in that game, and I think that's one of the ways it succeeds as a multiplayer game, and like it does make it a lot of fun. And it also gives you a lot of options to like switch around and try out different styles of play. Like that game definitely is fun and has like a lot of good stuff going for it as a multiplayer game.
So the next game that we have down here on our list is Titanfall 2, and I'm a little sad to admit I have not played any Titanfall 2. I played a decent amount of Titanfall 1, and boy, that was a fun game. So Titanfall 2, is it just more of this original? Is it different enough? I mean,
I'd say it's
Titanfall 2,
expanded
more
enough.
Titanfall.
I have not played a ton of the multiplayer in Titanfall 2. For some reason, it hadn't grabbed me enough for me to just keep going back to it. But I do think it's really high quality. It seems like there's a lot of options there, which
Yeah,
I don't know. You've played more of it than I have, so maybe
Yeah,
you're
and
better to
Ryan's
talk
played-
about it.
yeah, and Ryan's I think played more of it than me, but I think from a multiplayer standpoint, like it takes like I think Titanfall 1 for first-person shooters, like just like the core feel and action of that game, I think is at the time was like one of my favorite multiplayer first-person shooters ever. And it was light on modes and options and stuff. And I think what Titanfall 2 does is basically just take that same really fun core and branches it out just enough to give it more legs. Like I think that's the real strength of Titanfall 2 is it takes this thing that was like really good but like not quite where it needed to be, and it takes it where it needs to be. And like I think that just makes Titanfall 2 just a really fun multiplayer game. Like you think of like Call of Duty's been so good for so long, and I think Titanfall 2 is doing what that game did, but then also with its new mechanics, like all the wall running and the Titans and like all the other stuff that Titanfall 1 introduced. Like I think that just like adds a lot to the package. So I think there's a whole lot of good stuff to dig into with Titanfall. Like that's a game that I've had fun every single time I played multiplayer with it.
And I mean, I think that that's pretty high praise because, not every multiplayer game is one that you can say that you have fun with pretty much every time that you play it, I've definitely had plenty of experiences with multiplayer games, in years past where it's for whatever reason, it's like you have a bad night, you have a bad team, you have a bad whatever. It's like it just wasn't fun. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I do look forward to playing Titanfall 2 whenever I can convince all of you to buy it on PC. But I know that's probably going to be a while.
I don't know if Ryan has anything to add there, or if he's around.
Yeah, Ryan, you've played a lot of this, haven't you?
I have. It's great.
Nightfall 2, it's great.
Number
Drop
one.
the mic.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. So the last game on our list that I wanted to talk about is one that I've played by myself. So I'm going to get on a soapbox for like the next 3 minutes or so to try and convince you as to why this should be.
Kick my feet back.
Yeah, kick your feet back. I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story about World of Warcraft Legion. So I know that pretty much everyone on this podcast has played World of Warcraft at some point or the other. Some more recently than others. But there's a reason why I think Legion should be in contention for our top 3 for this year. And really it boils down to Blizzard kind of fell off a little bit with their WoW expansions, starting. Actually, it kind of started with Cataclysm. Is when the gaming websites of the world began reporting that the subscriber base for WoW was dropping, and that's pretty much continued for every year on year since Cataclysm came out, which I think might have been 2013, 2012. I'm not quite sure.
I have no idea.
Yeah, but so it's been like, and that's kind of normal for an MMO, right? Like, it comes out there at some point in the first few years. There's a subscriber peak, and then it begins to fall off from there. That's all normal. But whenever Legion came out, whether it was marketing from Blizzard or or like whatever, a lot of people picked that game back up. And I'm someone that played a decent amount of WoW. I played a decent amount of vanilla WoW, not as much Burning Crusade, and then I played a ton of Wrath of the Lich King, and then I just sort of just completely dropped off. I missed several expansions in the middle, and then Legion came out, and I'm like, why the heck not? We'll just give it a shot. So whenever Legion came out, Blizzard had basically released a good number of modifications to every single character class and made them all simpler. You no longer needed 74 buttons to play your class in optimum setup. And they also released a heck of a lot of good story that led into the expansion. And then immediately after the expansion hit, it didn't really stop. Each zone in the new expansion had a big overarching story, and that overarching story, thanks, Nate. That overarching story really just sort of culminated in each zone almost being its own narrative, in the sense that each zone was different, and you started in a spot, and then you followed a thread all the way through, and then at the end of a zone, you had a nice big cinematic that, sort of tied everything together. And, the WoW devs for this particular time, for whatever reason, they went big. They killed off so many important people. They had so many other important people show up. And in terms of WoW lore, this was a pretty big expansion. It was really good in a way that I'm like, maybe I've been missing out, or maybe I just haven't played WoW in a while. But then reports started to come out that their subscriber count actually went way up. It actually got, there's been conflicting reports, but supposedly it went back north of 10 million again shortly after the expansion dropped. So very, very positive sort of, reception from the community. I had a great experience with it. I played it for probably 2 or 3 months until I finished the quote unquote story content. And it was a lot of fun, and it was definitely a cut above what they released previously, which is why I kind of wanted to bring it into this little, this discussion for multiplayer, because it is an MMO, and it's practically
I'm still
the only
waiting for the
MMO.
multiplayer part of this.
So the multiplayer part is they actually have changed a lot of their logistical systems on the back end to find, groups for 5-man dungeons, to find groups for 10-man dungeons, to find raid groups. You don't necessarily have to have a committed set of guild mates with rough, really harsh schedules for raiding. They've done a lot within their game systems, including just different modes for you to see the content of basically a raid or a dungeon without necessarily needing to have incredibly skilled people to sort of guide you through. So that's where the multiplayer aspect comes in, is that if you have a guild, that's great. You get your guildies and you run off the same way that you would back in 2008, right? But if you don't, if you're a more casual player, the systems that they've introduced to group people together means that there's virtually no content within the game that you can't see just by yourself without any friends that play WoW.
Okay. It seems like good quality of life, back-end improvements to how grouping and multiplayer works is what this expansion has brought to the table for multiplayer purposes.
Although, are you still at the mercy of pickups, if you're doing that?
Yeah, but what they've done on the back end is you are getting into a pickup group, right? But if you're in with, say it's a 5-man dungeon, right? And all 5 of you joined through the looking for group tool, which means that you're all 5 pugs. All 5 of you are just pickup people. They actually buff your health, or they debuff the enemy's health and damage, because they know that you're not going to work together as effectively as a team of guildmates. And what that means is that for a lot of the 5-man dungeons, you're going to run through that and you're not going to have a ton of problems, because Blizzard knows that you're with people who may not necessarily be playing an optimum build, and that's okay because they've made it more accessible for you to do that. But they've introduced higher difficulty level for dungeons to still reward people who are teaming with, their guildmates or their real life friends. They've just sort of made it more. They've sort of made the difficulty level more granular than what they did before, whereas you either succeed or don't. Now it's more like, hey, if you want to know how this particular story thread ends, and this particular story thread ends in a dungeon, you're going to finish that dungeon, but you might not get the same level of loot that you would otherwise. And it's the same thing with raids as well. So they let you sort of experience the complete story with a whole lot of really great quality of life improvements. And not every person that you team with is, bad. Like, you'll team with people who will be good, and you start to build a friend group that way. And, you can start tackling the tougher content. But they've really done a great job of making that game accessible to people who don't necessarily have a strict sort of group that they play with all the time, if that makes sense.
So I'm going to put this on the table. Why don't we say Titanfall 2 is our multiplayer pick? Overwatch is in the top 3, and then you guys fight to the death over Legion or Crew.
I agree with that. I think Titanfall 2 and Overwatch are on here.
I don't think anybody's going to argue that Overwatch and Titanfall should be there.
Right.
Yeah. My big question mark with WoW is, like, as an expansion, like, is what it adds substantial enough?
So the only thing that I'll say to that is...
from a multiplayer standpoint, since this is the best multiplayer category.
Right. So the only thing that I'll say to that is that they have improved so much of the grouping aspect of the game that, I mean, it got, it got them a whole bunch more subscriptions. It got people like me back into the game, and I haven't played since 2010. So I'm like 5 years out of the game, 6 years out of the game. And they did it in a way that was actually enjoyable, which is like kind of the hardest part of an MMO, is having an enjoyable multiplayer experience with people that don't know. So I'll just kind of say that from that point of view, but it's still an MMO. You're still not having the kind of, couch co-op or like playing with, like what you describe as Fru is a very different experience from when I'm
absolutely.
Legion, right?
So when you're playing Legion recently, you personally, are you spending most of your time grouped with people, or are you doing most of your playing solo? Like, what has been your experience as you've played it?
So most of my experience running through all the new content, like the leveling in the zones, that's all content that's designed to be completed solo.
Right.
I actually played through like pretty much all that with my wife. So we were, teamed up, which made stuff, sometimes it made it laughably easy. Sometimes it was like, oh my God, how would they ever expect one person to actually solo this quest? But I have pretty much never had a bad experience using the looking for group tool or the looking for raid tool to get in there and to see how a lot of this content ends, right? So it was pretty much from the start of us playing until we got done, right? Because we ended up eventually going, hey, there are other video games than WoW. We should go play them. Like we never really had bad experiences with just random people on the internet whenever we would do a group activity. And it was pretty much, great all the way through in terms of, completion percentage and like not having guys call you all sorts of slurs. I mean, it was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't played WoW in a long, long time, but the one thing that I always dislike in MMOs or MMO-style games is when I can't do content that I want to do because I can't get a group together to do it or something like that. So having those features in there sounds really nice. I mean, I think Fru is cool. But if you feel strongly about WoW, I'm okay with that being our third game.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that too. I mean, I think Fru is incredibly inventive, super neat. But solving the problem of making pairing up with randos to do MMO stuff is plagued MMOs forever. And if Legion specifically adds stuff that's like helps that out a lot, like I think that's a strong case.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that there's no piece of content that you can't see with the built-in tools that Legion provides. That doesn't mean that you're going to have the best gear. That doesn't mean that you're going to do the most DPS. That doesn't mean that your numbers are going to be the highest. But if what you're interested in is seeing content, you can see all of the content using their built-in tools from start to finish.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad to hear that MMOs are in a state like that now, because that has always turned me off really hard about those.
It's really just WoW, to be honest with you. Like I've played a few other MMOs, and the gulf is still as wide as it's ever been. Which that's a whole other podcast about the genre of like MMOs.
You're saying Star Trek Online isn't doing it?
I'm just saying Star Trek Online's a whole lot of fun as long as you're a Star Trek fan. If you're not a Star Trek fan, you don't want to play that game at all. Okay?
Yeah. But even in games like, Destiny, I played a lot of Destiny, and I really liked the core of that game, but I could never do the raids because I didn't have a team of 5 or however many people that would go in with me. And so I just never got to see that stuff, and by all accounts, that was some of the coolest stuff in the game. If you want to make that be the case for it being number 3, I'm good with that.
All right, let's do that, and I'll let you guys fight amongst yourselves for which one's going to be number 1, Overwatch or Titanfall 2.
I don't think there's any fight there. I think we're pretty
I would fight a little bit, but I think I'm going to lose.
Yeah, Titanfall's the
Titanfall.
one.
I prefer Overwatch as a multiplayer game. I like Titanfall better as an overall game, but I prefer Overwatch as a multiplayer game from what I've played of it.
Overwatch is it was really fun experimenting with the classes, but once I kind of figured out what everyone did, it kind of just feels like doing the same thing a lot. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like Lucio, but when you're playing a lot of Lucio, you kind of just do your thing.
There are some cases like that, I think, but
yeah, to me, a Titanfall match just feels way more dynamic. It's you have the opening run where you're trying to hunt down some grunts right out the gate, and then you have some pilot skirmishes, and then the people who do really well at the start start getting their Titans in early, and then as more Titans start trickling in, you kind of have the back and forth of okay, which team has more Titans? All right, they have more, so we need to duck in buildings and take pot shots at Titans, or we have more, so we really need to get out there and do work. And then the bigger Reaper grunts start dropping in, and they're worth a ton of points. And then all of the different all the variability in the classes, we talk about Overwatch is 20 something characters. You can make pretty diverse characters in Titanfall as well. So I think despite Overwatch's big roster, I from what I've played, I think Titanfall just has it's just a more dynamic game, and I feel like it has, at least for me personally, it has more legs. I know there are a lot of people that would argue differently, but
and I'm not in love with either of these games from a multiplayer standpoint, so I'm not gonna fight this to the end. But I do think that you talk about Overwatch feeling like the same thing over again, but I get that feeling from
and I could see
games like Titanfall and other shooters of that sort. It all feels like run around, see somebody, left trigger, right trigger.
I mean, to a degree, that's all multiplayer games.
It is, and that's fine. I think in Overwatch you get a little bit more of unique encounters from the heroes mixing up, is what I would say.
Right.
So you get a part of a map where 3 heroes from one team and 3 heroes from another team meet up to fight. That could be 2 supports and a tank, or it could be 3 assaults. There are all these different mixes that it could have, and those abilities mixed together in different ways that I actually think makes that feel more distinct and dynamic from match to match than a game like Titanfall does, for me personally. I just think that for me, I like the wider variety of abilities that you get in Overwatch. I think, you do get loadout differences. I think the one thing that Titanfall has going for it in terms of different differentiation in a match is the sort of pilot Titan split. I think that's still a really cool dynamic that is really fun to engage with from any angle, whichever side you're on. And that I think is cool. Like pilot on pilot is fun. Pilot versus Titan is fun. Titan versus Titan is fun. Those are all cool. So I'm not disparaging Titanfall 2 by any means. I just think I've played more Overwatch this year than I played Titanfall 2 multiplayer, and I think I overall enjoyed it more. And if you asked me which one I wanted to go play right now, I would still say Overwatch. But that's just my spiel.
Yeah, I didn't realize we were gonna. Didn't realize we had an Overwatch defender here.
I'm pretty sure I'm outnumbered here, and like I said, I also don't have a really strong opinion, but that is my opinion.
I do like Titanfall 2 better, but it's also not really strong. I feel like Ryan may actually be stronger Titanfall than I am, perhaps.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
That is. Yeah, I mean, for me too. Like, part of it's, this may be a little bit unfair to Overwatch, but part of it is kind of where your group's at. Titanfall 1, like, I remember having fun with, but we had a very casual group of maybe 3 or 4 people playing it. So we played it like once every other week for, 2 months and then didn't play it anymore. And playing pickup in any multiplayer shooter is not a ton of fun. Like, I have a much more dedicated group playing Titanfall 2, but so, that instantly makes it more fun for me. But they're both really good games. Both really well polished. I think, Titanfall 2 is definitely the more fun game for me. Like I said, that puts the thumb on the scale for it. But, boiling it down, I could see arguments for both. I would just come down strongly on the side of Titanfall 2. I don't think it's been overdone. I don't think it's a tired formula. Like, this is only the second game in the franchise. So even though Overwatch is new, it kind of harkens back to Team Fortress a little bit. So it's, both games feel pretty fresh to me.
Yeah, I think they're both decently fresh.
Yeah, like, sitting here thinking, like, when I am playing, like, I've had duds of Overwatch matches where it's like, okay, I need to pick this role to fill the team, and this role is literally going to do one thing the entire match. And right. I can feel like individual matches, like, you settle into your role and you kind of do that thing. Like, I've played entire matches and performed effectively because this is a good strategy to do, of just sitting there as Torbjorn and hammering a turret. And
yes.
That's not really exciting. I mean, it's amusing to, like, watch your just score skyrocket because you're hammering a turret, but, like, and, like, if I'm playing Lucio, it's just like, all right, hang around the team and, like, shoot at things, and you're not really expected to kill stuff, so it doesn't really matter if you do or not. It's just like, hang around the team and you're good. So, like,
you can shove guys off ledges.
Yeah, that's true. Like, so your roles become, like, very specific. I feel like Titanfall, like, I have less bad matches, or, like, less duds of matches because, like, there's just a lot more flexibility, and, like, your role in a match is much more dynamic in Titanfall. Like, it covers a lot of ground. Like, you have, like you said, you have the different matchups, Titan on Titan, Pilot on Pilot, that stuff. And then, like, you're doing wall running, you're climbing roofs, like, you can go anywhere in the map. Like, there's a lot of different, like, roles you can fill as a player in Titanfall. Like, the different characters in Overwatch fill different roles, but once you've picked your character, you kind of have one thing to do, and you're going to do it.
Yeah.
So I think for me, that's why I've had more fun with Titanfall. And I think that I've also, like, I don't really ever play with pickup people, but I think I would actually have more fun just jumping in a random pickup game in Titanfall, just because, like, if you do a random pickup game in Overwatch, like, you're kind of relying on people picking a good spread of roles. And Titanfall, you don't really have that, like, everyone's a pilot.
It's less team focused for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it is team focused, but less so.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to concede this. I think they're both really, really good games.
Yeah, I like both.
My preference is only slight, so it's totally fine. We should say Titanfall 2 is our winner, but they're both really good.
All right. So, looks like for our best multiplayer game of the year, we're going to go with Titanfall 2 is our winner, followed up by Overwatch and World of Warcraft Legion. So, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to do our most surprising game, which is the game that just exceeded our expectations. It was something that we weren't expecting to actually be very good, and then it was. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a bit of a change of plans. We are actually going to go ahead and call it here for today. We're going to leave our most surprising game and our best narrative until day 2, which will be tomorrow. I have to go cook dinner, as well as several other people also must go cook dinner, because that's the way that we human beings work. We require food. Nom nom. So we will be back tomorrow for those 2 categories, plus the rest of our packed Game of the Year coverage here at ATACS. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you tomorrow.